Chapter 817. The elevator door opened, and Gu Xingze walked in. Yin Shishir had also finished replying to the text message, and followed him into the elevator. However, when she stepped into the elevator, she felt a violent tremor under her feet. The lights in the elevator suddenly flickered a few times, and the elevator suddenly lost control and fell. At this moment, Yin Shishir was already halfway into the elevator. Just as the elevator was about to lose control and fall, and she was about to be caught, Gu Xingze quickly grabbed her arm and pulled her into the elevator. Yin Shishir lost her balance and fell into his arms. Bang! Her phone fell to the ground. The two of them fell to the ground together because of the tremor in the elevator. Then they felt a strange centrifugal force and the elevator continued to fall. Bang! It was as if it had fallen to the bottom. After a short moment of suffocation, there was a loud clang. The entire floor of the elevator seemed to have collided violently, and it was so loud that their ears were buzzing. Gu Xingze subconsciously hugged Yin Shishir tightly in his arms. At that moment, he felt as if his bones were about to break from the impact of his back hitting the ground. Then, the entire elevator shook and the lights flickered. Everything returned to silence. At this moment, the elevator door slowly closed. Yin Shishir could not react in time. She did not realize what had happened at all. When everything quieted down, she looked around and saw that the elevator's floor display was black. In the elevator shaft, there was the sound of a rope being sawed. In the quiet and narrow space, these cold sounds only made one feel uneasy and anxious. The elevator malfunctioned? That was her first reaction. She turned to look at Gu Xingze, but saw that his face was pale, and he seemed to have a lingering fear. Clearly, he was still in shock from the accident that had happened earlier. Just imagine, if he had not acted fast enough, he might have only been able to watch Yin Shishir get caught in the elevator. As for the consequences, he did not even dare to think about it. Yin Shishir also carefully recalled that when she stepped into the elevator just now, she felt that the elevator suddenly fell. Gu Xingze grabbed her and dragged her into the elevator. Thinking about it carefully, Yin Shishir felt a chill run up her spine. If Gu Xingze had not reacted quickly enough, or if he had chosen to push her out instead of pulling her in, she would have been in deep trouble. Because of the situation just now, it was too late for him to push her out. She was almost caught in the elevator. The fear in her heart seemed to want to swallow her whole. She had just brushed shoulders with the god of death. Xingze. Yin Shishir's heartbeat quickened and her palms were full of cold sweat. However, she still calmed down immediately and said gratefully, "Thank you." Gu Xingze closed his eyes and quickly calmed himself down. He stood up slowly and pressed the button for the floor. The lights on the floor were no longer on. The lights above his head flickered and the exhaust fan was still running. He turned around and looked at Yin Shishir. His thin lips moved slightly. "Shishir, don't be nervous. I'm here." Yin Shishir responded with an and felt strangely calm. She did not feel so nervous anymore. Chapter 818. Gu Xingze felt a headache coming on. How did this happen? He had been in the industry for so many years, and had often flown around the world. He had also encountered hotel elevator malfunctions, but it had never happened to him. However, until he experienced it himself, he could feel the uneasiness and panic of being trapped in an elevator. He reached out and pressed the emergency bell. However, after pressing it for a long time, no one responded. What's going on? Gu Xingze looked puzzled. Is it malfunctioning? Yin Shishir also stood up and tried pressing the floor button, but the lights did not turn on at all. She pressed the emergency bell again. The bell rang, but no one responded. What's going on? Why is the emergency bell not working? Malfunctioning? It doesn't seem like it. Strange, there should be people on duty in the elevator management room 24 hours a day. Yin Shishir said gloomily. How can this hotel be like this? The security measures are terrible. This hotel is a small one. Many hotels are like this, Gu Xingze said. Yin Shishir asked, have you encountered this before? Yes, I have. I saw it on the news. Oh, I saw it on the news too. Didn't a university elevator malfunction before? A student got stuck in the elevator and died. Yin Shishir said. Gu Xingze said. I saw that report too. I didn't expect this to happen to me. It was so dangerous just now. Yin Shirshir saw the phone that had fallen and quickly picked it up. The phone had been turned off. She quickly turned it on and wanted to use the phone to call for help. Gu Xingze saw her actions and said, "It's no use. The phone signal in the elevator is blocked. There is no mobile network coverage. Moreover, we are in the basement now." Sure enough, Yin Shirshir turned on the phone, but there was no signal. She could not make the call. What should we do? There is no signal at all. There was no network and no signal. There was no way to communicate with the outside world. She suddenly panicked and fell into a deep helplessness. No one responded to the call for help, and there was no signal on their cell phones. They were like people who had gotten lost in the wilderness, isolated and helpless. Gu Xingze's brows furrowed slightly as he tirelessly pressed the button for help over and over again. However, perhaps due to the elevator's lack of maintenance or some other reason, no one responded for a long time. Could it be that someone in the security room was dozing off? In the end, he secretly left his post and went to play. Half an hour later, there was still no response. Frustrated, he punched the elevator door and finally gave up. Yin Shirshir sighed. "Are we on the 3rd floor of the basement?" "Yes." She asked again. "Will the elevator resume braking?" "I won't." Gu Xingze turned around and said, "There's an emergency device in the elevator. It's malfunctioning and has stopped the brakes. So now, we can only wait for the maintenance staff to arrive?" He pondered for a moment and slowly said, "Yes, that's the only way." Yin Shirshir suddenly lost all her strength and felt a little desperate. Then when will they find out that someone is trapped in the elevator? Gu Xingze looked at her and suddenly walked to her side. He picked up a blanket that had fallen on the ground and covered her body. "Don't be afraid. By tomorrow morning, someone will find out. This is already the worst-case scenario." The look of relief on his face gave her great confidence. Chapter 819. The moment she lowered her head, the water droplets on her hair dripped onto the floor of the elevator. Gu Xingze frowned and urged, "Dry your hair first. You've been drenched in the rain. Don't catch a cold." Seeing that she was drenched, he recalled that she had been in the rain for a long time. Because he was not in the right state. She had been drenched for a full 3 hours. He pursed his lips and could not help but blame himself and worry. "Are you cold?" "A little." Yin Shirshir curled her lips in embarrassment. Seeing the unconcealable worry in his eyes, she suddenly burst into laughter. Gu Xingze did not know whether to laugh or cry when he saw her laugh. "What are you laughing at? You're finally not so cold," Yin Shirshir said truthfully. If not for the elevator malfunction, she did not know how long Gu Xingze would continue to be cold to her. Gu Xingze was stunned for a moment before he laughed helplessly. He picked up a corner of the blanket and wiped her wet hair. Suddenly, he parted his thin lips. "I'm sorry." Yin Shirshir remained silent. She lowered her head and unlocked her phone. She turned on the music and played a single from Gu Xingze's album that had just been released. The sound of the music dispelled the uneasy atmosphere in the elevator caused by the dead silence. Gu Xingze also sat down and leaned close to her. It seemed that this way, he could transmit his warmth to her. After the production team packed up the props, many staff members left. More than 2 hours had passed, but Yin Shirshir was still nowhere to be seen. She raised her hand to look at the time. It was already midnight. Why was she not here yet? She dialed Yin Shirshir's number, but the robotic female voice said that the call could not be reached at the moment. She rushed to the hotel, only to see the person at the front desk dozing off. Hence, she walked to the elevator and pressed the up button, but the other elevator did not respond. It was a black screen. "The elevator is broken?" she muttered gloomily. "What kind of lousy hotel is this? This hotel wasn't a 5-star hotel. Although it wasn't considered high class, it was close to the filming location. Other than a 4-star hotel nearby, the other hotels were even more dilapidated. Only this one was slightly more proper." Lin Fengtian considered the issue of funds and booked the 2nd and 10th floors of the hotel. Among them, the rooms on the 2nd floor were arranged for the staff, and the 2 rooms on the 10th floor were arranged for the main actors. Of course, the main lead would not stay in a hotel. It was just for convenience when filming ran late. Moreover, Artists like Yang Mi and Gu Xingzi usually had nanny vans to accompany them. Most of the time, this room was only used for them to rest. To be honest, this hotel was really run down. The receptionist did not have any work ethics at all. She dozed off during working hours. One of the elevators was broken, but no one came to fix it. Perhaps it was too late. The maintenance staff had already gotten off work. Mushi did not think much of it. She went up to the 10th floor and rushed to her room. Just as she opened the door, she was greeted by a dark room. It was as if no one had been there at all. Mushi was stunned for a moment before she mustered up her courage to knock on Gu Xingzi's door, but no one responded. There was no one there either. When she returned to the first floor, she passed by the front desk and wanted to ask the staff at the front desk if they had seen Yin Shirshir. When she walked over, she saw that one of the staff on the night shift was dozing off. Forget it. It's pointless to ask. They're all dozing off. What else can they see? Chapter 820. I'll expose this hotel's service on the internet. She did not suspect that the elevator had malfunctioned, nor did she expect that the person she was looking for was trapped in the elevator. It was not that she was careless, but how would an ordinary person think of this? After all, under normal circumstances, elevator malfunctions would only happen on the news. Hence, she did not think too much about it. She walked out of the hotel and dialed Yin Shirshir's number again, but it still could not get through. She dialed several times, but all she heard was the mechanical female voice repeating the prompts. She wanted to dial Gu Xingzi's number, but then she realized that she did not have Gu Xingzi's number. Aya, what's going on? She rubbed her hair in frustration. Where did these two go? Why were they both uncontactable? By the time she returned to the set, the props were almost all packed. Lin Fengtian was still busy. Mushi stepped forward and cautiously asked, Director Lin, have you seen Shirshir? Shirshir? He turned around. Why would I see her? Aren't you her assistant? She was at a loss for words. He laughed. You're her assistant. If you don't know where she went, how would I know? Wasn't she drenched earlier? I told her to take a hot shower in her room, but she didn't come back. She complained. Have you looked for her in the hotel? There's no one in the room. Only then did he look straight at her. There's no one in the room? Then where else could she have gone? He found it strange. Did you call her phone? I can't get through. Can't get through. He frowned. She was so nervous that her face turned red. I called her a few times, but I couldn't get through. I don't know what's going on. From the corner of her eye, she saw Ruo Bing packing her backpack. Ignoring the director, she chased after her. Ruo Bing. The woman stopped in her tracks with a blank look. You are. I'm Yin Shirshir's assistant. Oh. Ruo Bing smiled. Sorry, I didn't recognize you. It's fine. She asked worriedly. By the way, have you seen my Shirshir? No. Ruo Bing was confused by her question again. However, he felt that something was off. Why did this little assistant run over to ask about her when her own artiste was missing? She was not Yin Shirshir's assistant. Then did you see Xingzhe? He probably went back. Ruo Bing said helplessly. Although I'm Xingzi's assistant, he's a little. Well, he doesn't like people interfering with his private life. Usually after filming, he doesn't let anyone follow him. Is it convenient for you to give me his number? She asked cautiously. Ruo Bing was startled, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, I can't. Xingzhe's number is usually not disclosed to others. I don't have any other intentions. I just wanted to ask Xingzhe if he saw Shirshir. She pleaded. Or it's fine if you don't give it to me. You can give him a call. It's an emergency, please. Lin Fengtian walked over. Seeing the conflicted look on her face, he said, Give Xingzhe a call and ask him where he is. Ruo Bing could not refuse the director's request, so she nodded. Okay. Chapter 821. The call went through, but no one picked up the call. At this moment, Gu Xingzhe was sitting in the driver's seat of his Porsche parked in the parking lot. His phone kept vibrating and ringing. No one's picking up. Ruo Bing said, This is Xingzhe's work number. He threw it aside after filming. Let's try calling a few more times. She pressed her palms together and pleaded again. All right. The woman nodded helplessly. She called a few more times, but still no one picked up. Seeing her disappointment, Ruobing comforted her with a smile. Don't worry, Yin Shishir is an adult and not a child. How could she go missing? You don't have to worry so much. She furrowed her brows, still feeling uneasy. When I first became an assistant, I was just like you. I couldn't wait to stick behind Xingze as if he were a child. Actually, as assistants, we don't have to worry about every little thing, no matter how big or small. Artistes should have their own private space, too. The director thought about it and raised a brow. You go back first. I'll send someone to look for them. Okay. Thank you, Director Lin. She had no other choice. At this moment in the elevator, Yin Shishir wrapped her wet body in a blanket and curled up in a corner. The damp and cold air kept invading her body. The air conditioner in the elevator continued to pour in cold air. She had been drenched in the rain for so long that her wet clothes stuck to her body. She was wet and cold, and with the air conditioner blowing, she felt even colder. She did not know how long she had been trapped in the elevator, but she felt that time passed abnormally slowly. Gradually, she felt a little lightheaded. Her body slumped in a corner, and she became a little dispirited. Gu Xingze persistently pressed the help button until the device's battery ran out, and it stopped ringing. A minute. He cursed under his breath and turned around, only to see Yin Shishir wrapped in a blanket and shivering all over. Gu Xingze's heart tightened. He immediately walked to her side and squatted down. He carefully placed his hand on her shoulder, but his fingertips came into contact with a patch of dampness. His heart ached, and he gently pushed her shoulder. Shishir? What happened to you? Ugh. Yin Shishir was a little delirious. She peeked her eyes out of the blanket, but there was no focus in her eyes. Cold? So cold. Gu Xingze raised her head and looked at the mouth that was still emitting cold air. The direction of the wind seemed to be aimed at her. No wonder he felt cold. His entire body was drenched, and the cold air was blowing on his body. He said gently, Shishir, don't do it here. You'll catch a cold. Yin Shishir's brows furrowed slightly as she moved slightly. Yes. She held his arm and stood up slightly, but her legs were inexplicably soft. Gu Xingze touched her hand, only to feel that her palm was covered in cold sweat, and her fingertips were burning hot. His heart skipped a beat, and he reached out to touch her forehead. A scalding temperature spread from the center of his palm. She had a fever. Gu Xingze bit his lower lip. His heart was burning with anxiety and anger. On one hand, he was angry at the hotel's terrible emergency equipment, but on the other hand, he felt very sorry for her. Gu Xingze brought her to another corner and took off his jacket to cover her back. He was afraid that she would catch a cold in the cold elevator walls. Yin Shishir did not even have the strength to thank him. Chapter 822. She didn't notice the air conditioning in the elevator just now. She only felt that it was getting colder in the corner. She curled up into a ball unconsciously, but she still couldn't resist the cold. Gu Xingze sat beside her. Seeing her dispirited expression, her breathing a little rapid, and her palm-sized face burning red, his heart ached. Unwilling to give up, he pressed the emergency bell again, but there was no more sound. He pressed it continuously, and the battery had long since run out. He kicked the door, and it made a loud bang. It wasn't that he didn't shout. However, he knew that the elevator was now parked in the basement. If no one passed by, no one would notice, and no one would hear his cries for help on the first floor. Calling for help with all his might was futile. In fact, a few people had parked their cars in the basement and went upstairs. However, they saw that the elevator seemed to have malfunctioned and couldn't operate, so they went to another elevator. In this world, most people were indifferent. They were in a hurry and didn't care about themselves. After all, in most cases, most people wouldn't be willing to worry about things that had nothing to do with them. Therefore, no one reported to the front desk that the elevator was malfunctioning. Some people thought that the elevator was being repaired, so they didn't ask about it at all. Time ticked by. Gu Xingze picked up Yin Shishir's phone and glanced at it. It was already 3 in the morning. The phone had been playing music, and the battery was about to run out. He turned off the music to ensure that the phone's battery was maintained. This desperate situation could be considered as keeping a glimmer of hope for them. If there was a miracle and there was suddenly a signal, they could use the phone to call for help. Yin Shirshir covered herself with the blanket and shivered. Gu Xingze gently placed his hand on her forehead. Her forehead was frighteningly hot. His heart became a little anxious. Staying in such a confined and narrow space for a long time already made her feel a little suffocated. If she fell asleep with a fever, it would be easy for her to have breathing difficulties. If the high fever didn't subside, it was even possible for her to suffocate. Therefore he said gently, "Shirshir, don't fall asleep, okay? Wake up." Yin Shirshir's voice was muffled. It was hoarse and weak. "My head hurts. It's so cold." Gu Xingze's brows furrowed slightly. Instinctively, he wanted to reach out and pull her into his embrace. However, just as he reached out his hand, he lowered his head to look at her slightly furrowed brows. Suddenly, he froze in midair and didn't move for a long time. He looked at her trembling shoulders and struggled in his heart for a long time. In the end, he placed his hand on her shoulder and slowly pulled her into his embrace. Yin Shirshir was startled for a moment. Suddenly, she felt a strong heartbeat in her ears. It was scorching hot. Thump, 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 thump. Every sound was filled with great power. He gathered the blanket around her and wrapped it tighter around her. "Don't fall asleep. Someone will come to save us soon." Gu Xingze comforted her gently. Sensing that the body of the person in his arms had stiffened, he immediately explained, "I was just afraid that you would be cold." "Thank you," Yin Shirshir said softly. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito, almost inaudible. "Let's practice our lines," Gu Xingze suddenly said. He was really afraid that she would fall asleep and have an uncontrollable fever. In fact, he didn't know when the rescue team would arrive with the efficiency of this hotel. However, at this moment, he could only comfort her like this. Chapter 823. Gu Xingze could not help hugging her tighter when he heard her voice getting fainter. Lowering his head, he suddenly saw a thermos flask beside her hand. His eyes flashed as he opened it. There was still some warm ginger soup inside. He carefully poured out some and brought it to her mouth, reminding, "Shirshir, drink some ginger soup." Yin Shirshir sat up slightly and took a few sips. After drinking a few mouthfuls of the warm ginger soup, her body seemed to be filled with a faint amount of heat. Gu Xingze poured her another cup, and Yin Shirshir obediently finished it. Seeing that she had finished all the ginger soup, Gu Xingze was afraid that she would fall asleep, so he said, "I'll sing for you." Yin Shirshir blinked. Okay." Gu Xingze's lips curled into a smile as he spoke in a hoarse voice. "A long, long time ago, you had me, and I had you a long, long time ago. You left me to soar in the distant sky." Mushi returned home. After washing up, she lay in bed, but she still could not sleep well. Even after returning home, she still tirelessly dialed Yin Shirshir's number over and over again, but she still could not get through to her. Although Lin Fengtian and Ruobing repeatedly comforted her, she still felt uneasy. Perhaps it was a person's sixth sense. Moreover, although she had not been by Yin Shirshir's side for long, she understood her character. Whether she was coming home or not, she would at least let her know. Yin Shirshir was very polite and treated everyone around her with utmost respect. She would not let her worry, unless it was something out of her control. Mushi tossed and turned in bed as her thoughts ran wild. Suddenly, she sat up in frustration, and the phone beside her pillow rang. In the dark and quiet, the phone's ringing gave her a fright. She was startled at first and then quickly picked up the phone, thinking that it was Yin Shirshir calling. However, the string of unfamiliar numbers displayed on the screen made her heart turn cold. Mushi sighed and picked up the call, asking weakly, "Hello? Hello, are you Yin Shirshir's assistant?" A child's childish voice came from the other end of the phone. It was quiet, but there was a hint of anxiety. He was as steady as an adult. If it wasn't for that immature voice, she wouldn't even be able to tell that it was a child's tone. Mushi was stunned and subconsciously answered, "Yes." On the other end, Yin Tianyu was sitting on the sofa with a business card in his hand. His expression was solemn. "Yin Shirshir is my mommy. She hasn't come back yet, and I can't get through to her phone. I want to ask, do you know where she is?" Mushi was stunned. She immediately reacted, thinking that it was a child's prank. Child. Sure had a child. What kind of joke was this? Sure was only 24 years old. And she already had a child? She obviously didn't believe him. However, is my mommy still filming with the crew? It was time to go home. She sent me a message earlier, but I haven't heard from her since. I can't get through to her phone too. I'm very worried. Sorry to disturb you. Yu's tone was polite and courteous, but more than that, it was calm and smooth, which was rare for a child. Chapter 8:24. Yin Tianyu caught a clue. You said that she disappeared without a trace after the shoot? Yes. She nodded repeatedly. Yu looked at his watch. It was already past 5 in the morning. What time was it? I can't remember either. At this time, Yu was unexpectedly calm. Think about it carefully. She carefully recalled and said, it should be around 10. I really can't remember the exact time. I didn't pay attention to the time at that time. He hurriedly checked the last message sent by Yin Sure. It was 10:12 a.m. The time matched. On the other side, she cautiously asked, little friend Yu, is Yin Sure your mommy? Yes, he replied abruptly. Where are you now? Is it convenient for you to pick me up? She looked out the window. It was already late at night. She was a little worried and doubtful of this child. So she said, why don't we call the police first? Auntie, the police only filed a case after losing contact with her for 48 hours. Although we can still call the police now, it's already so late. How efficient do you think the police will be? Yu seriously reminded her. Mushi was stunned by his calm analysis. This child. His rationality had completely overturned her worldview. How old was this child? Judging from his voice, he was no more than 6 or 7 years old. Were children nowadays so smart? He even knew the conditions for the police to file a case? Auntie, I'm very worried about my mommy, but I'm the only one at home now. It's inconvenient for me to go out, so I can only trouble you. Okay. Then your house is Xiangti Walk. I'll wait for you at the entrance. Okay. She hung up the phone, changed her clothes, and left with her car keys. Her apartment was only a 10-minute drive away from Xiangti Walk. Soon, she arrived at the entrance of Xiangti Walk. She sat in the car and was curiously looking at the entrance when a light knock came from the car door. The sudden movement startled her. She immediately looked over and saw a little munchkin wearing a white shirt and a small suit with suspenders. He was carrying a small backpack and standing at the car door. Surprised, she quickly unlocked the car door. Then she watched helplessly as the handsome and delicate little boy nervously climbed into the car. His posture was as light as a cat. He quickly closed the door and fastened his seatbelt skillfully. Then he looked at her. Let's go to the set. Her assistant. Could she say that she was frightened? She had never seen a child who was still so calm even after his mommy was gone. She looked at him carefully. The child was only about 6 or 7 years old. He was so tender that it seemed as if milk could drip out of him. He had a handsome and pleasant little face and exquisite facial features. His eyebrows were indeed very similar to Yin Shurshu's. Did Shurshu really have a child? Mushi was greatly shocked by this fact. Seeing her staring at him in a daze, he waved his hand in front of her. Mushi returned to her senses and saw his serious expression. Auntie, you can't be in a daze while driving. It's very dangerous. She mumbled. Thanks for the reminder. Let's drive. Yin Tianyu ordered. In fact, he originally wanted to call Li Hanlin to pick him up. Chapter 8:25. Mushi drove all the way to the set. At this moment, the set was in dead silence. All the props had been packed up and transported away. The huge parking lot had been restored to its original state, and there were no clues to be found. Yin Tianyu searched the set for a while, but did not find anything. She stared blankly at his calm and rational face. She could not tell that he was only 6 or 7 years old. Were children nowadays so precocious? Yin Tianyu walked up to her and asked, Mommy sent me a message before I lost contact with her. It was around 10 p.m. Where did she go at that time? Hotel. Yes. She was drenched, so I let her take a shower in the hotel. Hotel. He could not help feeling suspicious. Yes. She explained. Our production team booked a room in the hotel next door. It's usually for artistes to rest. Shershur's room was on the 10th floor. Yu asked, "Won't we know Mommy's whereabouts if we go to the hotel to check the surveillance footage?" His words woke her up from her daze. She smacked her head. Oh right. Why didn't I think of that before? Yu secretly gave her a look of disdain. Because she was stupid. Of course, he could only criticize her inwardly. He did not show any contempt for her IQ on his face and only asked, "Can you bring me to the hotel then?" Okay. She squatted down and wanted to carry him. Yin Tianyu said, "I'll walk by myself." Mushi. She wondered if this child had non-human genes. Usually, children would be afraid of walking at night. Did he want to be carried? He did not want to be carried. His face seemed to be full of disdain. She wanted to cry but had no tears. The two rushed to the hotel. The moment they entered, Yin Tianyu started looking around. This hotel was not ordinary rundown. This production team was really stingy. She explained that the production team was controlling the budget, so they did not stay in a high-end hotel. Yin Tianyu did not show it on his face, but he was doubtful inside. Did he not invest a sum of money? Tens of millions. Did a dog eat it? Excluding the remuneration of the stars, the cost of a youth movie was very low compared to those commercial blockbusters that required special effects. Moreover, Leji was not the only investor. Huanyu had other investors plus advertising placements, yet they were still staying in such a shabby hotel? Or could it be that the money he had invested had gone missing? Mushi walked to the front desk and saw that the receptionist had already fallen asleep. She called out a few times, but there was no response. Yu walked over and kicked a stool. The receptionist woke up with a start. Looking around, he saw a handsome little boy standing in front of him, looking at him with disdain. Immediately he said angrily, "Where did this kid come from?" "Auntie, are you awake?" Yu said coldly, but his words were shocking. The young 29-year-old receptionist was petrified when she heard him call her auntie. Mushi was dumbfounded by his simple and crude method. This child. Who did he look like? Right, she had just thought of a question that needed to be investigated. If this was really Shershur's child, then who was the father of this child? She kept feeling that when she saw his face, a vague image of a man's face suddenly appeared in her mind, but she couldn't remember who it was. Now is not the time to pursue this matter. Chapter 826. She then asked, "Receptionist, where is the hotel's surveillance room? Can we take a look at the footage?" The receptionist was stunned. She then yawned and sized her up warily. "You are?" "I'm from the production team of the Green Apple. Our production team has booked 10 rooms in this hotel." The receptionist was a little stunned. "I've just been transferred here not long ago. I heard that a production team has booked this hotel, but why do you want to see the footage?" "It's an emergency, of course. An artiste from the production team went missing after entering the hotel. Her phone can't be reached, and she disappeared after entering the hotel, so we want to take a look at the footage." The receptionist rubbed her sleepy eyes and apologized. "I'm sorry. If someone from the production team goes missing, shouldn't we call the police directly?" "Call the police?" "That's right. May I ask how long has she been missing?" "Since 10 o'clock until now." "Call the police then." Yu said, "Even if we call the police, we'll only take a statement and file the case 48 hours later." Mushi nervously said, "Actually, given the current situation, we don't need the police to make an appearance. We just need to know where she went after entering the hotel." "It's like this," the receptionist explained seriously with a frown. "If the police don't make an appearance, we don't have the right to access the footage," the receptionist said truthfully. "Why? We don't have the authority," the receptionist said. "Some time ago, a client's laptop and some belongings were stolen from the hotel. He also requested for the footage to be removed. In the end, the police had to intervene to get the footage." Yu furrowed his brows. This hotel service attitude was really worrisome. Mushi had already gone to the side to call the police. In the end, the police replied that there were not many officers on night duty at the police station. 2 of them were taking statements and could not respond to the call in time. They also said that if the person was missing, It was recommended to call the police 12 hours later, or wait until after 8 a.m. for the police to send someone to understand the situation. After hanging up the call, Yu asked about the situation, and she told him the truth. What should we do? She asked anxiously, subconsciously asking for his opinion. Even she did not realize that an adult like her was seriously asking a child for advice. Yu's pink lips slightly pursed. Then he thought of something and took out his phone to dial a number. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. He said, "Daddy, I'm at Hao Tai Hotel now. There's an emergency. Come over." Mushi stared dumbfoundedly at him as he calmly hung up the phone. Her mind was in a mess. She could see the anxiety and nervousness in the child's eyes. Even though he was anxious, the calmness he showed was admirable. 10 minutes later, a sports car stopped at the entrance of the hotel. When the slender and handsome man appeared at the entrance, she was stunned. Only then did she realize why this child's appearance was so familiar. Mushi's lips twitched as she sized up the father-son pair in a daze. The father of this child was actually the crown prince of the Mu clan, Wuxia. She suddenly understood the killing intent and anger in his eyes when he saw Yin Shishir being bullied and slapped by Yin Bingqing. Chapter 827. Mushi was still in a state of confusion. Wuxia walked in and saw the little lad standing at the front desk. He walked over to carry him and asked him what had happened. The receptionist stared at the handsome man in front of her with her mouth agape. Even though Wuxia had rushed out in a hurry and was only wearing a casual shirt, she could still feel his innate elegance and nobility. Come to think of it, this man's identity must be either rich or noble, with an extraordinary background. He was tall and had an extraordinary aura. Just by standing there, his aura permeated every inch of the room, making the large space seem extremely narrow and small. While Mushi was still in a daze, Yu had already recounted what had happened to him in a very short time. Wuxia's eyes turned cold. When did she disappear? Yu said. Mommy's last reply was at 10:12 p.m. When I called her at 10:30 p.m., I couldn't get through. He could not contact Yin Shishir, so he rummaged through the house and found Yin Shishir's and Qin Zhou's name cards. He first called Qin Zhou's number, but it was switched off. He then called Mushi's number, which led to the subsequent incident. Yu continued. Now I mainly want to see the hotel's CCTV, but the receptionist said that only the police have the authority to access the CCTV. Wuxia's cold gaze landed on the receptionist. The receptionist trembled under his glare and hurriedly explained. Sir, this is the hotel's rule. I really can't make the decision. If you're not the police, you can't access the CCTV. Have you called the police? Yes, but the police said that they will only arrive in the morning. Wuxia narrowed his eyes and carried Yu to a corner. He made a call and gave a few brief instructions. She did not know what he said, but soon 3 police cars arrived in a hurry. What happened next left her dumbfounded. 4 to 5 men in police uniforms alighted. It was the police chief, Chen Wei, who had hurriedly led a team here. When he walked through the door, he saw a tall man standing in the hall. He immediately bowed and walked forward with a flattering and respectful smile on his face. It was worlds apart from Mushi's impression of a policeman who did not like to smile. Chen Wei walked up to Wuxia and bowed slightly, saying in an extremely respectful tone, Hello, CEO Mu. Hello. I didn't know it was you, so I've neglected you. Please don't take it to heart. Wuxia remained expressionless and did not speak. Son. Is it? Wuxia did not fall for his trick though. His voice was so cold that it made one's scalp tingle. I think we can skip the pleasantries. Business is more important, isn't it? This time it was cold, dignified, and extremely intimidating. He stood there without any expression on his face, but he still exuded an aura of authority. Wuxia's name was known by everyone in the capital. It was just that very few people had the honor of seeing his face in person. This was Chen Wei's first time seeing him. Previously, he had only heard of his name. Now that he saw him in person, he was greatly shocked. Tall, handsome, and dignified, just like the rumors said, he was a dragon among men. Chapter 828. Wuxia said, I want to take a look at this hotel's CCTV, but the hotel said that they don't have the authority to do so without the involvement of the police. Chunwei nodded repeatedly. Sir, you want to take a look at the CCTV, right? Leave it to me. I'll arrange it right away. With that, he straightened his face and walked to the front desk, putting on a dignified look that a bureau chief should have. Mushi, who was standing at the side, could not help but feel a little depressed. It was no wonder that people were so unscrupulous when it came to power and fame. Thinking about it, she had stood before the front desk and pleaded with them in every possible way. But the receptionist had rejected her several times. She even called the police, but no one came. What about now? To put it bluntly, it was just that she did not have enough face. At this time, the receptionist had already called the lobby manager on duty and invited him over. With the bureau chief here, the rest of the matter was naturally much easier to handle. The CCTV room was on the second floor, so a group of people crowded around Wuxia as they walked to the elevator. When they passed by the elevator, the receptionist saw that there was no response from one of the elevators and muttered, "Is this elevator broken?" "Broken? Why is it broken?" The lobby manager's face turned ugly. He immediately went forward to test it, and it was indeed broken. "Get someone to fix it this morning." Yu frowned and suddenly asked, "Could it be that Mommy is trapped in the elevator?" Mushi was startled and was stunned. That seemed to be a possibility. Think about it. Mommy's phone can't be reached no matter what. Usually, there's no signal only in the elevator. Yu calmly analyzed the situation. At the side, the lobby manager's face turned ugly. How is that possible? If someone is trapped in the elevator, there are people on duty 24 hours a day in the CCTV room. They'll definitely discover it immediately. Maybe the person on duty in the CCTV room is dozing off like the receptionist. Yu retorted. The receptionist blushed. The lobby manager glared at her fiercely, but still tried to salvage the situation. "That can't be. Let's go to the CCTV room to take a look. We'll know." However, when the group reached the CCTV room's entrance, they saw 4 security guards playing cards in a corner with glowing faces. Rather than calling it a game of cards, it was more appropriate to call it gambling. The lobby manager was furious and scolded, "It's working hours now. What are you all doing?" The 4 of them were shocked. When they turned around, they saw the imposing and magnificent group. They stood up trembling with fear and awkwardly tried to smooth things over. The lobby manager still wanted to reprimand him, but Wuxia glanced at him. Chunwei immediately understood and hurriedly said, "Don't waste time. Finding the person is more important." To the computer room. The computer room was very small and filled with machines. Hence, with Chunwei and Mushi following behind, Wuxia carried Yu in. As soon as she walked in, Yu glanced at the screens and suddenly turned pale with fright. She pointed at one of the screens and said, "It's Mommy." Everyone looked in the direction she was pointing and saw Guxingza hugging Yin Shirshir in the narrow elevator on the screen. The two were curled up in a corner. Yin Shirshir seemed to be in a bad state. Even though the CCTV footage was a little blurry, one could still see her dispirited and listless look. Wuxia's heart skipped a beat. He walked to the front of the CCTV screen and pursed his lips into a cold line. His cold gaze swept behind him. His gaze was cold and intimidating. Chapter 829. Ah, Xingze is here too. Mushi let out a yelp of surprise and went over to take a look. She too saw Yin Shirshir's body curled up in the blanket as she shivered. Her heart ached for her. Oh gosh. She got caught in the rain and was trapped in the elevator for so long. I wonder if she'll catch a cold. With that, she glared at the lobby manager angrily. Tears were about to fall from her eyes. What's wrong with your hotel? The front desk is dozing off, and there's no one watching over the surveillance room. Even the security guards are playing cards. She's been trapped in the elevator for so long and you don't even know. If anything happens to her, can you bear the responsibility? I'm sorry. The lobby manager apologized profusely, full of regret. Wuxia ordered. What are you waiting for? Hurry and contact the rescue team. Yes, sir. The lobby manager hurriedly contacted the rescue team. Yu's little hand touched the screen. The love in her eyes was almost overflowing. Mommy. Wuxia was still angry. He stood in front of the surveillance screen and watched Gu Xingze hugging Yin Shishir tightly. His eyes suddenly narrowed dangerously. Mushi was good at reading people's expressions. Seeing the coldness on his face, she immediately explained, Xingze must be afraid that Shishir will catch a cold, so he's hugging her. It's useless to say all this now. Saving people is more important, Yu calmly said from the side. Mushi was secretly surprised and could not help but be impressed by this child's maturity and composure. By the time the rescue team and the fire department arrived, it was already dawn. The ambulance also hurried over. However, it was unknown who leaked the news, but the media caught wind of it. When they heard that Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir were trapped in the elevator, they all squatted at the hotel's entrance to create headlines. Chen Wei immediately called for the police to prevent these reporters from interfering with the rescue. The maintenance staff of the elevator began to investigate the location of the elevator. The conclusion was that the elevator did not stop at the flat floor, but at the bottom. Muyaja and the rest stayed in the surveillance room to check on the people's condition while the rescue team went to basement 3. When the elevator door opened, Mushi hurriedly called out, Xingze, Shishir, are you guys there? Inside the elevator, Gu Xingze heard Mushi's call and immediately responded, here. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, had a high fever and was unconscious. She did not have any reaction. We're already thinking of a way to get you out. Xingze, Shishir, how are you? Gu Xingze quickly replied. I'm fine, but Shishir has a high fever. Hurry. Mushi was stunned and immediately pleaded. Please quickly save him. All right. Miss, please calm down first. We'll get the equipment immediately. As the elevator stopped at the bottom, they first had to manually turn it to a position roughly parallel to the floor before they could save the people. Mushi immediately said, Xingze, Shishir, be careful. We'll be able to get you out soon. Okay. Gu Xingze immediately patted Yun Shishir's cheek gently and said, Shishir, wake up. Wake up. We'll be able to get out soon. Gu Xingze could not help but hug her tighter. He gently planted an encouraging kiss on her forehead, raised his face, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Chapter 830. In the elevator room, 2 maintenance workers were setting up the winch mechanism to prevent the elevator from moving too quickly or accidentally when the brakes were released. The other used a mechanical method to loosen and tighten the brakes. When the brakes were released, the other 2 used their strength to pull the winch mechanism to slowly move the elevator upward. The elevator shook uneasily as the lights flickered. Yin Shishir curled her body even tighter. The excessive shaking made her headache worse and made her dizzy. Every time there was a violent shaking, there would be a dead silence. Then there would be another tremor. In the control room, Yu was also looking at the scene on the screen anxiously. He suddenly raised his head and said to Muyaja, Daddy, let's go to basement 3. Mommy doesn't seem to be feeling well. I'm worried. Okay. Muyaja carried Yin Tianyu to basement 3. However, when they arrived, they did not see the medical team. Yu asked, and Mushi immediately said, I'll go take a look. Not long after, she hurried back and said, The entrance is surrounded by reporters. The ambulance is blocked by a human wall, so it can't enter. Chief Chen has already sent more people over. Reporters? Muyaja knitted his brows in displeasure. Mushi said indignantly, Yes. I don't know who leaked the news, but when the reporters heard that Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir were trapped in the elevator, they all rushed over to get a scoop. Yu also frowned and asked, Where's the police? Mushi said anxiously, There are too many reporters. Various media outlets have sent many people to snatch the news and report, so there's not enough police. On the other end, the elevator maintenance workers' walkie-talkie reminded them, Soon. Be careful. A group of people gathered around the elevator. Then they heard a quang, and the elevator made a deep sound. The walkie-talkie said, It's in place. When the rescue team opened the elevator door, they saw Gu Xingze hugging Yun Shishir in the corner of the elevator. When he heard the commotion, he looked up and bumped into Muyaja. He was slightly stunned, but in the time he was in a daze, Muyaja had already strode into the elevator, picked up Yun Shishir from his arms, and left without looking back. Yu followed closely beside him, and couldn't help but stand on her tiptoes to check on Yin Shishir's condition. Her small hand gently held her mother's hand, and her delicate eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Mommy has a high fever. Wuxia lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. Feeling the heat from her forehead, a trace of uneasiness appeared on his face. Mushi glanced at Yin Shishir and then at Gu Xingze. She hurried in to help him up. Gu Xingze slightly dodged her attack. Mushi froze in midair. She suddenly remembered that Xingze seemed to have a serious obsession with cleanliness, and did not like excessive contact with others. At the thought of this, she looked slightly embarrassed and smiled with concern. Xingze, are you all right? Gu Xingze slowly stood up, but he had been squatting for too long. When he stood up, his body swayed slightly and he felt a little dizzy. He wanted to chase after Yin Shishir to check on her condition, but Wuxia had already carried Yin Shishir away in a hurry. When he appeared at the door with Yin Shishir in his arms, it caused a huge commotion. Chapter 831. Oh my god! Isn't that the CEO of Mu Group, Wuxia? What is he doing here? He's hugging Yin Shishir? And they look so intimate. This scene could not help but make people's imaginations run wild. The reporters discussed animatedly. I heard that Huan Yu banned Yin Bingqing some time ago. Rumor has it that Yin Bingqing bullied a newcomer in the crew. The newcomer in the crew of the Green Apple is Yin Shishir, who is a little more famous. Someone whispered. Isn't there a rumor that Yin Shishir was able to sign a contract with Huan Yu's headquarters right after her debut because she has a sugar daddy backing her? Could the sugar daddy be Wuxia? It's very possible. The camera flashes were overwhelmed. The reporters scrambled to squeeze at the door and extended their microphones, asking loudly, So Mu, look here. I'm a reporter from Phoenix News Agency. May I know what relationship you have with Yin Shishir? What relationship do you have? CEO Mu. There are rumors that you have a close relationship with Yin Shishir. May I know what relationship you have with Shishir? Countless microphones were extended in front of him. The flashing lights were blinding. Wuxia hugged Yin Shishir expressionlessly. He completely ignored these aggressive interviews. How could the reporters let go of such an exciting piece of news? They stubbornly followed behind him. Some even formed a human wall in front of him, blocking his way. Wuxia narrowed his eyes. His handsome face was extremely gloomy, and he was about to explode. Yin Shishir nestled in his arms. There was a loud noise in her ears. So noisy. The flashing lights were so glaring that it made her eyes hurt. Wuxia lowered his head and saw her slightly uncomfortable expression. His eyes were tinged with coldness and sharpness. He swept his gaze across the surroundings. Suddenly, a biting cold aura spread out and froze everything. However, these professional reporters were not to be trifled with. They were not afraid of his terrifying expression at all, and still kept moving forward. Yu grabbed onto Wuxia's sleeves tightly, but she was still squeezed by the crowd. He had never seen such a congested scene. There were so many people in front and behind that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Questions came one after another, leaving no time for anyone to digest and understand the situation. Mushi had also arrived, but when she saw the crowd at the entrance, she was stunned. She subconsciously put on a professional smile and said, Everyone, please don't crowd. Please be careful and don't crowd the entrance, okay? The situation is critical now. Everyone, please make way. Please don't block the entrance, okay? As soon as he finished speaking, a man in the crowd shouted, Don't change the subject. Yin Shishir, please answer me directly. Are you Wuxia's mistress? The sharp question caused the crowd to quiet down immediately. When Mushi heard this, the smile on her face froze. She stood rooted to the ground for a moment, until the smile on her lips gradually turned cold. Yu's little face turned even paler. Even though he was young, he understood what the word mistress meant. Kept. Mistress. This was a blatant insult. The harsh question caused an uproar in the crowd. That man continued to press on. Chairman Mu, does silence mean that you're admitting it? After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into another round of questioning. Chapter 832. If the rumors are true, does that mean that you're a third party in your relationship with Wuxia? Yin Shishir, I heard that you were adopted from Xingde Welfare Institute. Is that true? And the director of Shengda Welfare Institute, Luo Hanjin, was arrested for child molestation. The news said that many children in the Welfare Institute were victims. Have you ever been sexually assaulted? Yin Shirshir's eyelashes trembled slightly. She looked down and closed her eyes tightly. Her lips were stiff and her face was pale. The harsh voices echoed in her ears. The unbearable questions were asked again and again, but they were so sharp in the noisy world. Yu stood there in a daze as if she had been petrified. She did not move. The flashes kept flashing in front of her eyes. Gradually, her vision went blank. Mommy is not a third party. What are these people talking about? Mu Yaja stood silently at the same spot, and did not move an inch. His cold gaze swept across the crowd as his fists clenched tightly. Seeing that he had stopped in his tracks, the reporters swarmed forward and put their microphones to his mouth. Daddy. Yu opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her weak voice was instantly drowned out by the reporters' questions. Mu Yaja suddenly reached out and held her little hand tightly. Yu felt the warmth from his palm and felt inexplicably calm. Soon 3 to 5 police cars rushed over. Chief Chen led the team to maintain order at the scene. The medical staff of the ambulance also rushed over. However, the reporters were blocked at the entrance like a wall and could not break through the crowd. Gu Xingze walked to the door and saw the scene in front of him. His face froze. He looked at the crowd at the entrance expressionlessly and narrowed his eyes. Seeing that Gu Xingze had also appeared, the reporters went crazy. The reporters rushed forward and the flashes became more intense. The sound of the film rolling could be heard continuously. Xingze. Look over here. Please share your views on Yin Shirshir. Xingze. Look here. I'm a reporter from Starlight Daily. Mu Yaja suddenly said, Scram. Even though his cold voice was deep, it was like an imperial edict that didn't allow anyone to question it. His gaze swept across the crowd. The coldness in his eyes caused people's hearts to palpitate. Some of the reporters who were close to him could not help but take a few steps back because of the murderous aura emanating from his body. Mu Yaja lifted his foot and was about to walk towards the ambulance when the reporter who had asked the sharp question earlier did not fear the cold aura he exuded. He squeezed to the front with no regard for his own safety and blocked his path with his camera. He extended his microphone. Chairman Mu, you haven't answered my question yet. Mu Yaja suddenly stopped and glanced at him dangerously from the corner of his eyes. His lips curled into a cold and mocking smile. When the reporter saw that he had stopped, he quickly moved the microphone closer and asked a series of questions. Please give a direct answer. May I ask if Yin Shirshir is your mistress? Before he could finish his sentence, Mu Yaja kicked the reporter away expressionlessly. The latter was caught off guard and stumbled a few steps back before falling to the ground. The crowd was in an uproar. Mu Yaja hit someone. Chapter 833. The flashing lights instantly drowned them out. A reporter from a famous entertainment newspaper squeezed in front of them, raised his Canon-like DSLR, and started taking pictures of them. Mu Yaja turned his face dangerously. With a frown, he punched the camera lens and smashed it into pieces. He looked up expressionlessly. His aura was as cold as ice as he said coldly, "Shut up." The atmosphere quieted down. An eerie silence. Everyone froze on the spot. Time seemed to have stopped. Mu Yaja said in a low voice, "Move aside." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at each other and cowered. No one dared to step forward and obediently opened up a path. Yin Shirshir was hurriedly sent to the hospital. Preliminary diagnosis showed that she did not have any external injuries. However, due to the air conditioning and the fact that she did not change out of her soaked clothes in time, the cold air invaded her body and caused her to have a high fever of 40 degrees Celsius. If it had been any later, she would have been in danger of contracting pneumonia. After sending Yin Shirshir to the hospital, Mu Yaja asked Yu and Mushi to stay in the ward to look after her, and left in a hurry. The reporters who had surrounded the hotel entrance were also brought back to the police station and investigated for obstructing public order. With such a thing happening, Mu Yaja naturally would not let them off easily. These motley crew were all dismissed and blacklisted, unable to work in the media industry for the rest of their lives. Mu Yaja also got his men to delete all the photos taken. The results of the investigation showed that these reporters were a motley crew from some third-rate media companies who would do anything to get the news. It was said that the hotel staff leaked the news. They rushed over when they heard the news and squatted at the hotel entrance. Soon, the hotel staff who leaked the news was also found out. It was the hotel receptionist. The police came to take the receptionist away for investigation. Although Wuxia suppressed it in time, the news of Yin Shirshir interfering in a rich family's marriage spread like wildfire on the internet. The Water Army started spreading rumors on Weibo. The mysterious financier behind Yin Shirshir lifts his veil. It's Wuxia, the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. Explosion. The crown prince of the Mu Group is angry because of a woman. Yin Shirshir interferes with the marriage of a rich family. Is the rising star of the film industry the third wheel? Yin Bingqing was banned by Huanyu because she offended Yin Shirshir. The reason was that Yin Shirshir was the mistress of the Mu Group's crown prince. Yin Shirshir actually had an illegitimate child with Wuxia? Soon, these scandals were all over the internet. However, because most of the rumors seemed to be groundless, there was no real evidence to verify this matter. Therefore, netizens could only wait and see about this matter. Many people ran to Yin Shirshir's Weibo, wanting to leave comments for her. However, Mushi had foresight and blocked the comments section of Weibo at an extremely fast speed. However, she did not expect her actions to make it even more conspicuous. In an instant, the news of Yin Shirshir interfering in a rich family's marriage spread on the internet. It caused a storm and was confusing for a moment. Many netizens sighed with emotion. This Yin Shirshir, who had just debuted, seemed to have the effect of being a hot topic and had repeatedly topped the list of hot topics. Chapter 834. Yu scrolled through Weibo and saw that the rumors were spreading everywhere. He vaguely smelled something fishy. He felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Huanyu Entertainment had a monopoly on the media industry. However, the topics on Weibo were mostly directed toward Yin Shirshir and Wuxia. Huanyu Entertainment did not even make a move. This was indeed a little abnormal. Not to mention Wuxia, even Yin Tianyu could sense that something was fishy. After Wuxia was done with his work, he received a call from Mu Sheng, asking him to hurry back to the Mu residence. He righteously said that he had an urgent matter to announce. He did not need to think to know what it was. Wuxia did not care about it at all. Yin Shirshir was still in the hospital, and he did not know what was going on. No matter how important the matter was, he had to put it aside first. Hence, after leaving the police station, he drove to the hospital. When he entered the ward, Yu was guarding by the bed. Yin Shirshir was asleep. She had changed into a clean hospital gown with the help of the nurse. At the same time, she used a hot towel to wipe her body. The 4 drip was already changed to the 4th bottle. Seeing him walk in, Yu's face showed dissatisfaction. Wuxia exchanged glances with him, and easily caught the displeasure in his eyes. Without guessing, he knew what the little guy was unhappy about. He was different from other children and matured at a young age. Hence, when he was surrounded by reporters at the hotel entrance, those sharp words hurt both Yin Shirshir and him. "You're here." Yu glanced at him, his expression a little cold. "Have you settled everything?" "Yes, I have." Wuxia walked to the bedside and reached out to check the temperature of her forehead. After 3 bottles of 4 drip, the temperature had dropped, but the fever was still not completely gone. Yu did not intend to let the interrogation go just like that. He suddenly pulled his hand and led him to the balcony. Closing the door and leaning against it, the little guy's face was cold, and there was no need to hide the anger in his eyes. "What happened today made me very unhappy." With a short opening speech, the little guy went straight to the point. "I know that some media reporters are very unscrupulous, and that we shouldn't bother with their sharp and tricky questions. I also know that mommy will have to face some rumors when she enters the entertainment industry, which is a place of trouble. This is not what I want to see though." "Okay." Wuxia waited for him to continue. His son was young, but the words he spoke were much more mature than an adult. "I heard someone asking you if mommy is your mistress. I don't want to hear such a question a second time. Do you understand?" After a pause, Yu expressed his attitude. "If there's a next time, even if you don't do anything, I won't let it go." "What will you do?" You don't have to ask me what I will do. I won't interfere with you, and you don't have to ask me about my decision. I only want to tell you that I will only do what I think is right." His young voice revealed his determination. In his heart, he was thinking that if there were such unbearable rumors in the future, he might take action and get rid of Mu Wanru. Chapter 835. Making a person disappear from this world without leaving a trace was not a difficult task for him. Mu Yaja saw some clues in his son's eyes. It seemed that his son had some tricks up his sleeve. However, as a father, he naturally didn't want his son's hands to be stained with those unclean things. So he said, "Give me a month." A month? Yu was obviously unhappy with the number. He shook his finger and said, "I'll only give you half a month." Mu Yaja thought for a moment and said, "Okay." Yu said, "Daddy, don't let me down. After all, you're my daddy. You're an excellent man. Don't let my mommy get hurt again." Mu Yaja reached out and rubbed his son's hair. Then he heard the little boy say seriously, "I know why you haven't done anything yet." "What do you mean?" "You've seen through Mu Wanru's identity long ago. I know why you haven't done anything about it yet." "Oh." Mu Yaja was surprised. He squatted down and looked into his son's eyes. "Tell me, what's the reason?" "You're waiting for the right time." Yu pointed out briefly. Mu Wanru is so weak that she can't even withstand a single blow. She must have some power behind her since she could stay in the Mu family for so long. You haven't done anything yet, because you want to lure the snake out of its hole. Isn't that right? Mu Yaja's face froze. He said, "The Mu family is a big family. Many people in the family are eyeing the position of the successor. Naturally, you have to clean up those who want to seize power to stabilize the family's morale." He changed the topic. "But how do you know?" "I'm not telling you." Yu kept him in suspense. He looked at the sky and said, "I'll only tell you that I've planted spies in the Mu family." Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes slightly. "Spies?" "Yes." "How long ago?" "It wasn't long ago, but we managed to obtain some reliable information. I only want to remind you that Mu Wanru and that person have already made their move. Over the past few days, Mu Wanru has taken advantage of her position to plant that person's men into the consortium's headquarters. I'm afraid she's going to do something secretly." Mu Wanru was the human resources director of Dishing Financial Group. Mu Yaja glanced at him. This brat had some ability. "Daddy, as far as I'm concerned, the Mu family is nothing in my eyes. In my eyes, whether it's power or wealth, it's meaningless if I can't protect the people I love. In other words, if you let mommy get hurt, I won't forgive you no matter how powerful you are or how wealthy you are." Yin Tianyu did not care about a mere Mu family. Mu Yaja didn't care about it either. His current status and power were not entirely dependent on the Mu family. Outside of the Mu family, he already had his own empire, one that was on par with the Mu family's. In other words, he did not care about the inheritance of the Mu family that Mu Xing mentioned. He originally wanted to wait until Grandpa Mu breathed his last before eliminating the remaining members of the Mu family one by one. In the past few days, that person had indeed lost his cool and was slowly giving himself away. Alas, that person was a sly old fox who hid his true colors well. It seemed that he had to hasten his actions. "Didn't you give me half a month's time?" Mu Yaja said. "It's a deal then." Chapter 836. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. His admiration for his son grew. It was as if the student had surpassed the master. This son of his would definitely be very capable in the future. He was so young, yet his mind was so complicated. He even knew how to play the tricks of a big family. In fact, this feeling was very unpleasant. His son seemed to know everything about him, but he couldn't figure out what kind of power was behind his precious son. "Stay at the hospital and accompany mommy. I'm going back to the Mu residence." Mu Yaja gave a few more instructions before leaving in a hurry. On the way back, he received a call from his grandfather, urging him to go home. He said that he had something important to announce. The important matter he was talking about was probably his engagement with Mu Wanru. These few days, the Muse had received news that Mu Sheng's health was deteriorating, and his situation was getting worse. It was as if he knew that he did not have much time left and was about to die. He started to worry about his marriage with Mu Wanru and started to make arrangements for it. It was said that Grandpa Mu planned to hold the wedding within this month as soon as possible. He did not return to the Mu residence these few days, and Xiao Yichen was arranged to stay in the condominium beside Dishing Financial Group. When he returned to the Mu residence, Mu Sheng saw him without batting an eyelid. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, was beside Mu Sheng. She kept her head down and secretly observed his expression from time to time. Mu Yaja glanced at her and happened to catch her secretly looking at him. His gaze was cold and deep. It was as sharp as a sword covered in snow, and it made her panic. She felt that no matter what she did, she could not escape his eyes. When Mu Yaja sat down, Grandpa Mu did not make any small talk. Instead, he went straight to the point. When do you plan to set the wedding date? His question left no room for negotiation. Before Mu Yaja could say anything, Grandpa Mu said unhappily, Wanru is pregnant. Don't delay the wedding any longer. When the dust settles on your wedding date, Grandpa's heart will also be at ease. Aja, I don't care what you do outside, but you're not young anymore. It's time to settle down and start a family. Grandpa's only wish now is to see you marry Wanru. Only then can Wanru truly be considered a member of the Mu family. If Grandpa's body allows it, I'd like to see your child being born again. You've never disobeyed your grandfather. Grandfather's body may not be able to hold on for much longer. Stop fooling around. At least, fulfill Grandfather's last wish. His words were sincere. For him, Mu Wanru was only a member of the Mu family when she married into the family. He wholeheartedly wanted to give Mu Wanru a proper status as the young mistress of the Mu family. Mu Yaja looked up, his expression as cold as ice. Seeing his cold expression, Mu Sheng suddenly added, if you really like that woman, it's not impossible. You can marry her as a concubine too. That woman is called Yin Shishir? Mu Sheng's eyes narrowed slightly. She should be a woman with some tricks up her sleeve. That was what he thought. After all, Mu Yaja had never had a woman by his side all these years. This lad seemed to be very cold when it came to women. However, Yin Shishir was the first woman by his side. Chapter 837. This Yin Shishir was definitely not simple. Mu Wanru, who was standing at the side, looked surprised. Mu Sheng actually relented and allowed Yin Shishir to marry into the family as a concubine? She found it hard to believe. However, in fact, in the Mu family, only the head of the Mu family had such a privilege. Take Mu Sheng, for example. Other than his first wife, there were also his second and third wives. Although the three women were constantly fighting under the same roof, they appeared to be very harmonious on the surface. Other than that, Mu Sheng also had a few concubines outside. In ancient times, a concubine was a concubine. In fact, as a concubine in the Mu family, other than having a lower status than the first wife, there was no difference in other aspects. The only difference was that the few wives were legally married, while the concubines could not hold a wedding ceremony and could only marry into the family directly. After all, monogamy was now practiced. Even if the Mu family was rich for 100 years, some things could not be too ostentatious. However, allowing Yin Shishir to marry into the family as a concubine was already the biggest concession he could make. After all, Grandpa Mu hated Yin Shishir from the bottom of his heart. After all, for so long, no one could make Mu Yaja go against his wishes. Yin Shishir, however, did it. Naturally, he hated her to the core. Mu Yaja merely chuckled when he heard that. His eyes were calm and unruffled, and no one knew what he meant by that. However, since Mu Sheng had already made his intentions clear, he intended to make a proper decision on this matter this time. Grandpa, I remember that when I was still young, you arranged a marriage for me, right? Mu Yaja looked at him as he said this. His interruption was so sudden that Mu Sheng did not react in time. Don't you remember? Mu Yaja paused for a moment before saying casually, although I was young, my mother told me that you arranged a marriage for me. I heard that the girl is from the capital's Song family. Song family? Mu Wanru obviously did not know about this. After all, this happened before she was taken into the Mu family. Mu Yaja said again. The Mu family in the capital is a prestigious family. But after Mu Wanru returned to the Mu family, you didn't hesitate to offend the Song family's old man, and cancelled the engagement. Growing up in a wealthy family, marriage had been reduced to a bargaining chip. It was not something that they could decide. For example, the marriage between a father and a mother had nothing to do with romance or love. It was just a marriage between two families. The marriage between the two was nothing more than a paper deal between two wealthy families. What puzzled him, however, was that, after Mu Wanru's return, Mu Sheng resolutely called off the engagement between the two families. This made Old Master Song very embarrassed. Mu Sheng's face froze, but he did not say a word. Indeed, this did not seem to be his character. According to him, marriage was just a bargaining chip in exchange for fame, wealth, status, and power. Mu Wanru's mother, Mu Qingcheng, was just a singer. She did not have any maternal power to speak of. Mu Sheng's insistence on letting Mu Wanru marry into the Mu family, even making her the main wife, was indeed beyond everyone's expectations. Mu Yaja's eyes turned cold. You keep saying that you want me to fulfill your wish. I just want to ask you what wish Grandpa wants me to fulfill by marrying this woman. Mu Sheng sealed his mouth tightly, unable to say a word. Chapter 838. This grandfather of his was in his twilight years, and did not have many days left to live. As he grew older, he no longer had that much ambition. Before he died, he only wanted to fulfill his unspoken wish. That was his unfulfilled wish for Mu Qingcheng. His love for her was no longer in the category of adoptive father and daughter. There was even a time when he wanted to marry her as his wife, but she already had someone else in her heart. Alas, he had always been very possessive. How could he tolerate the woman he loved having someone else in her heart? Hence, there was a time when he wanted to force her to submit. Although she was a singer, her character was chaste, so how could she submit? In the end, she could not stand his perverted possessiveness, and fled the Mu family with her pregnancy. The Muse sent out countless men to search for her. They could not wait to turn the capital upside down to catch her. However, when they finally found her, she was already a cold corpse. This car accident was laughable. If she had not been trying to avoid the men sent by the Muse, how could she have gotten into an accident? His heart was filled with self-blame and guilt. Feeling as if a knife was being twisted in his heart, he fell ill and was bedridden for a long time. In the end, this wish fell on Mu Wanru. Even if he could not marry her, at least he could let her daughter marry into the Mu family. This could be considered as fulfilling his wish. It was because of his perverted obsession that Mu Yaja did not bring Yun Shirshir back to the Mu family. He dared not imagine what crazy things his grandfather would do if he saw Yun Shirshir, who looked almost identical to her. Moreover, the Mu family was in turmoil with constant infighting. He had to tread carefully to get to where he was today. Therefore, he had been waiting for an opportunity to personally wipe out the traitors within the Mu family. Before that, he would not let Yun Shirshir take even half a step into this tiger's den. After a long silence, just as he was about to speak, Mu Yaja suddenly asked, "Grandpa, are you determined to make me marry this woman?" Mu Wanru bit her lower lip and gently rested her hand on his shoulder. Mu Sheng looked up and placed his withered hand on the back of her hand. He looked at Mu Yaja and said, "Grandpa, haven't you already taken a step back? If you have any woman you like outside, you can marry her and make her your concubine. As for Wanru, she must be the young madam of the Mu family. There is no room for discussion on this point." Since Grandpa said so, Mu Yaja suddenly said, "Then I'll do as grandfather says." His words gave the old man a shock. He originally thought that his grandson would still resist him, but he didn't expect him to agree so quickly. He had resisted so fiercely earlier. But now instead Mu Sheng felt that Mu Yaja's docile attitude was somewhat abnormal. Mu Wanru was also stunned. She did not expect Mu Yaja to agree to marry her. Mu Yaja did not look at them. He just casually took out a cigarette box and lit it. "Since it's Grandpa's wish, I won't fight for it anymore. Besides, you're already old. My only wish is for my marriage to be settled according to your wishes. Since Grandpa likes her, I'll marry her." Mu Sheng and Mu Wanru were completely dumbfounded. Mu Wanru, in particular, had a comical expression on her face. Chapter 839. The old man was the first to react. You're really willing to marry Wanru?" "There's no need to doubt my words." Mu Yaja pursed his thin lips. "Grandpa, you know that I'll do what I say." He was a man of his word. This was his grandson's attitude towards the world. He had no doubts about this. Great. Overjoyed, he immediately said, "That's great. Since you're willing to marry Wanru, Grandpa is naturally happy." With that, he held Mu Wanru's hand tightly, unable to hide the joy on his face. "That's great. I'm afraid that the Mu family will have double happiness in no time. Since that's the case, I'll quickly get someone to make arrangements. The wedding can't be delayed any longer. We should at least announce it to the media first. Then Grandpa will get someone to pick an auspicious date for your wedding." According to tradition, after the wedding date was set, the Mu family would hold a grand press conference and invite business and political celebrities, aristocrats, and various media outlets to witness it. After that, they would hold the grand wedding of the century. Compared to his joy, Mu Wanru's smile seemed a little forced. That was because she did not believe that Mu Yaja would really marry her. Ever since she reached an agreement with Mu Yaja that day, she no longer had any illusions about marrying him. Mu Lianjue had promised her an inexhaustible supply of wealth after the deed was done. Hence, she was willing to follow his instructions. Not only did she plant his men in Dixing's headquarters, she even poisoned Mu Sheng's medicine. In the entire Mu family, she was the only one who could do this. Now, however, Mu Yaja actually said that he was willing to marry her. Didn't that mean that she would become the young mistress of the Mu family soon? Everything seemed like a dream. It was unbelievably beautiful. Why would Mu Yaja be willing, though? Not to mention other things, just the fact that she was pregnant and the child in her belly was not his. Yet he was still willing to marry her. This was the greatest humiliation to a man. "Grandpa, there's one thing you must do, though. Don't forget what you promised me earlier." Mu Yaja's words were concise, but Grandpa Mu understood and nodded. "Don't worry. Grandpa will give it to you before the wedding. The Mu family's power." Although Mu Yaja was the heir of the Mu family and had the right to inherit, this power was different from the inheritance. The Mu family's power symbolizes the highest authority. Only the patriarch had the right to do so. Mu Sheng had once promised him that if he married Mu Wanru, he would pass the family head position to him. Generally speaking, given Mu Sheng's character, he would not hand over the Mu family's authority unless he was on his deathbed. After all, in a family like the Mu clan's power meant supreme power. If one had the Mu clan's power, it meant that the Mu clan had the power to control life and death. Many people coveted it. Think about it. If Mu's families to be Mu's to the family to have the families to be, the family's morale would be unstable, and he would not be able to rest until his death. If it were someone else, he might not agree. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was his most trusted grandson. Grandpa Sheng, on the other hand, trusted him. Chapter 840. Oh, although she was unwilling, she could not pry any further from his stern words. After a moment of silence, the old man said, "How about this? I'll announce it on the day you and Wanru get married." Mu Yaja replied, "Since that's the case, I'll go make the arrangements now." "Okay." The old man nodded in relief and did not say anything else. Mu Yaja went upstairs. Mu Wanru hurriedly chased after him. He stopped in his tracks and slowly turned around, only to see her standing behind him bashfully with a complicated expression. She was stammering and hesitating to speak. "What's the matter? Mu Yaja, are you really willing to marry me?" Mu Wanru asked hesitantly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and even unconcealable suspicion. Mu Yaja glanced at her, but his eyes were cold and indifferent. Hearing her question, he raised a brow impatiently. Mu Wanru quickly explained, "I don't mean anything else. I'm just curious. After all, you said that you won't marry me. It's really surprising that you've changed your mind." "What's so surprising about that?" Mu Wanru laughed and said, "I'm just too happy, so happy that I'm still a little doubtful. I don't believe that you're really willing to marry me. I still feel like I'm living in a dream." Mu Yaja remained silent. Mu Wanru could not help feeling awkward, but she still wanted to clarify this matter. After all, the love she had for Mu Yaja was hard to let go. "If you marry me, then what about Yin Shirshir?" she asked carefully. Mu Yaja coldly replied, "You have no right to mention her." Mu Wanru's face was suddenly filled with disappointment. she said in shame. Yes, I know. I know that it's already my greatest honor that you're willing to marry me. Other than that, I won't ask so much from you. But, if you really want to marry me, I swear, I will learn how to be a qualified young mistress of the Wuxia. But do you really not mind my past? Her mind was in a mess. She always suspected that Wuxia didn't marry her for such a simple reason. Therefore, she wanted to find out more about it. After all, Wuxia was extremely shrewd. This man's thoughts were unpredictable. She couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she tried. She always felt that his decision wasn't that simple. Mind what? Wuxia's cold eyes fell on her body. I married you because grandfather ordered me to. I don't want to disobey. As for the rest, you don't have to ask. Wanru was shocked. Wuxia said, besides, you've always taken good care of grandpa, no matter how big or small. Since it's grandpa's wish, then I will comply. You married me. Then do you like me? Even if it was just a little bit. It made her so happy that she couldn't control herself. But he coldly asked, what does my marriage with you have to do with whether I like you or not? Wanru choked. I know that you married me because of grandfather's order. It has nothing to do with romance or love. I also know that I let you down. But in the future, I will try my best to play my role. It's good that you know. Wuxia finished and turned away. Wanru, on the other hand, stood rooted to the spot. Her heart was in a mess. She went back to her room and sat on the bed, but she felt that her thoughts were in a mess. Chapter 841. Initially, she had been following the man's plan in an orderly manner. Now, however, things seemed to have taken a turn for the worse. Since Wuxia was willing to marry her, it meant that she would soon be the real young mistress of the Mu family. This meant that she should be on the same side as Wuxia and Mu Lianjue's enemy. Should she still carry out the man's plan then? Wanru was in a terrible fix from the series of events. On second thought, since Wuxia was willing to marry her, she must stand on his side and do her best to protect his position. After all, if Wuxia married her, they would share honor and disgrace together. If Wuxia lost his position because of Wuxia, she would be in deep trouble. Still, she did not know what Wuxia was thinking. She felt that this man was unfathomable. Hence, Wanru was a little hesitant. Alas, the Muse were busy preparing for the wedding these few days. On this day, Aaron suddenly found her. The two of them agreed to meet in a secret place. When he saw her, the first thing he said was, Wanru, come with me. Let's go far away from this troublesome place. Aaron, don't look for me anymore. In the future, we'll return to how we were before. I'm Wuxia's fiancé, and you're his assistant. Wanru said coldly. Fiancé. He burst into laughter. Wanru, what are you talking about? Are you talking in your sleep? Fiancé? Do you really think that Wuxia will marry you? Wanru smirked. Why not? He said that he'll marry me on a date. He's already making arrangements for it. He was stunned. How is that possible? Why not? He's already promised Grandpa. The entire Mu family is making arrangements to announce our marriage. Wanru could not hide her smugness. Aaron sneered. Impossible. Nothing is impossible. You're just unwilling to accept it. Do you really think that Wuxia is that stupid? Wanru, think about it. Does he really intend to marry you? Putting aside your identity, you're pregnant now. You can fool Musheng, but can you fool Wuxia? Will he marry a woman who's pregnant with another man's child? Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Why not? He's marrying me because he doesn't want to go against Grandpa's order. Don't think he's too great. Alan retorted. He's definitely not a simple man. Wanru, don't let your guard down. Maybe he's set a trap for you and is waiting for you to jump into it. The Muse are a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. Wuxia has his current status at such a young age. To be able to become an outstanding man in a place like the Muse, you can imagine what he's been through. Do you really think that he's a simple man? In fact, he's more unfathomable than you think. Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. Come with me. Running away with me is the best choice for you right now. He extended his hand to her and opened his palm. Mu Wanru was in a daze for a moment, and unexpectedly extended her hand to him. Seeing that she seemed to have changed her mind, his face lit up. However, Mu Wanru slapped his hand away harshly. Chapter 842. Alan's face froze. Why? I won't go with you. Just give up on it. Mu Wanru said. I believe in Muyaja because he does what he says. Since he said that he will marry me, then he will definitely marry me. After that, she was about to leave. However, Alan took a step forward and hugged her tightly. Don't go, he almost put down all his dignity and hugged Mu Wanru. His whole body was trembling. Wanru, I really love you. Although I can't give you wealth, I will work hard and use my hands to create a stable life for you. Wanru, I really love you. My heart has never changed. For you, I entered the Mu group. For you, I did so many evil things for you. But now you want to leave me. Wanru, is your heart so hard? Stop talking. So disgusting. Mu Wanru struggled to get out of his arms. However, Alan hugged her so tightly that she almost suffocated. She screamed hysterically. Ellen, I can't be with you. I was born as a member of the Mu family, and I will die as a ghost of the Mu family. Just give up. Aaron was taken aback. While he was in a daze, Mu Wanru stepped on his foot harshly and left his embrace. She turned around and glared at him coldly and resolutely. I don't like you at all. I never liked you. I've only been using you from the beginning to the end, do you know? I don't like you at all. Haven't you given up? After shouting, she tried to calm down the anger in her chest. She tidied herself up and said to him, Alan, I've kept you until now because I care about your feelings for me. You'd better disappear from my sight now and never appear again. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Her words were unusually ruthless. In other words, if he still did not know his place, she would kill him and get rid of him to prevent future troubles. Alan was shocked by her ruthless warning. He could not help but widen his eyes. Wanru, why are you so heartless? Since you know I'm heartless, why don't you disappear from my sight? Okay, I'll disappear. Alan lowered his head in a daze, like an empty puppet. Mu Wanru snorted and walked out of the alley. However, just as he got into the car and started, he still didn't see Alan walk out of the alley. Just as she was feeling suspicious, she suddenly heard a gunshot. Even though the gunshot had been silenced, it was very quiet and there was no one around. Therefore, she immediately caught the faint sound. His heart skipped a few beats. She got out of the car and walked to the entrance of the alley, but what she saw made her heart palpitate. Alan leaned against the rugged wall, his eyes wide open, his face pale, and his weak body slowly slid down the wall. Dark red blood splattered on the wall. At Alan's temple, there was a bloody hole that was gurgling with blood. The man who had just asked her to run away with him had now turned into a cold corpse. One of the men in black put away his gun. Suddenly sensing something, he turned his head and bumped into Mu Wanru head-on. The man in black's face was cold, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. Ah! Mu Wanru screamed and almost fell to the ground in fright. Chapter 843. Mu Wanru did not know how many red lights she had run along the way. It was only when she reached the city center that she stopped the car by the roadside. The scene she saw earlier gave her a huge shock. She held the steering wheel and clutched her thundering chest, unable to calm down for a long time. What exactly happened just now? She seemed to have seen Aaron being killed. Who was it? What was going on? Mu Wanru found it hard to calm down. Just as she was feeling tense, her phone suddenly rang. Mu Wanru was so shocked by the sudden ringing that she almost lost her soul. After forcing herself to calm down quickly, she picked up the phone with trembling hands. It was an unknown number on the screen. Having just received a huge shock, she could not help feeling jittery. It was only after a long while that she picked up the call. Hello. It's me. Mu Lianjue's gloomy voice came through. Mu Wanru inexplicably calmed down upon hearing his voice. Fourth uncle, it's you. Mu Wanru, you're really hopelessly stupid. He suddenly cursed. That Aaron knows everything about you. He can't be left alive. Yet you still let him live. At the mention of Aaron, Mu Wanru was taken aback. She carefully probed. Did you send someone to kill Aaron just now? It's me. Do you think that I'm as stupid as you? How could I leave such a big scourge alive? He paused. Not only does he know everything about you, but he's also not smart. If he lets the cat out of the bag and gets caught by Muyaja, you'll be finished. Mu Wanru was still of great use to him now, so he must protect this chess piece of Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, was stunned. It was really him who killed him. She tried hard to maintain a calm expression, but she was shocked once again by his ruthlessness. Suddenly realizing something, she questioned in astonishment. Fourth uncle, are you following me? She had purposely chosen a secluded place for her meeting with Aaron, where there was hardly anyone within a few miles. Unless he had sent someone to follow her deliberately, he would not. It was terrifying to think about it. This man was indeed a sly old fox. Him following her clearly showed that he did not trust her. I'm following you. He did not deny it. That's because I'm worried. If anything happens to you, it'll hinder me. Mu Wanru, I'm warning you. If you hinder me in the slightest, I'll get rid of you. Do you understand? Mu Wanru's lips trembled in shock. In the rearview mirror, her face was frighteningly pale. When she thought of Alan's miserable death, she felt an inexplicable sadness and pain in her heart. In fact, she still had some conscience at least. Aaron truly loved her, and was even willing to betray Muyaja for her. Alan's persistent and solemn words still echoed in her ears, saying that he would take her far away and give her a stable and peaceful life. However, in the blink of an eye, his pitiful look flashed before her eyes. Feeling uncomfortable all over, she covered her mouth in grief. I must speed up my plan. Chapter 844. When this old thing hands over the Mu family's power, you'll still act according to my plan. Do you understand? His tone was firm and did not give her any room to resist. Mu Wanru only replied, I understand. Recalling something, she cautiously asked, Fourth uncle, you promise me that you'll get rid of Yun Shirshir and Yun Tianyu. You don't have to ask about this matter. Even if you don't ask, I'll get rid of them. Mu Wanru's heart finally settled at his words. Mu Lianjue gave a few more instructions before hanging up the call. Mu Wanru stared ahead in a daze. Her hand loosened, and the phone slipped onto the seat. Now she suddenly felt a little paranoid. The man's words just now made her hair stand on end. She felt that every passerby in this huge downtown area was someone he had sent to tail her. Mu Wanru gritted her teeth, held the steering wheel, stepped on the accelerator, and sped away. After 2 days of being on the drip, Yin Shirshir's fever was almost gone. When she woke up in the morning, Mushi had already prepared porridge and sent it over. Yu was by her bedside. He had been accompanying her in the hospital for the past 2 days. Seeing that she had woken up, he hurried over and placed his small hand on her forehead. When her fever finally subsided, a gratified smile appeared on his face. Mommy, your fever is finally gone. Yin Shirshir's lips were dry. She opened her mouth, but a hoarse voice came out. Yu hurriedly passed her a glass of water and raised the bed so that she could lean against it and sit up. Yin Shirshir drank a few mouthfuls of water, and the discomfort in her throat subsided a lot. She could not help but sigh. Fruits were really the source of life. It felt as if her mental strength had come alive. Mommy, I really don't know what to do with you, Yu said helplessly. You've been hospitalized twice in just a month. Are you having bad luck this year? Yin Shirshir felt wronged and said, Yeah, I'm so unlucky to have encountered an elevator malfunction. How unlucky? Yu pouted helplessly. Taking the porridge Mushi had cooked for him, he sat by the bed and fed her spoonful by spoonful. Yin Shirshir had a lot of feelings in her heart. On the first night in the hospital, although she was unconscious, she could still feel that Yu had gotten up in the middle of the night to cover her with a blanket. It was better to sweat more when one had a fever. And when she felt hot, sometimes she couldn't take it anymore, so she kicked off the quilt. Yu patiently got up and covered her up again for the next 2 days. Even Mushi sighed. It was a great blessing to have such a filial son. Yin Shirshir was well aware of this. Hence, when she looked at Yu, the guilt in her heart almost overwhelmed her. Seeing the unconcealable guilt on her face, Yu pretended to be relaxed and said, Mommy, what's with that look? Yu, it must be hard for you to take care of Mommy like this. Of course. Mommy always kicks off the quilt at night. This is a terrible habit. You're sick now, yet you don't know your place. You must not have slept well these 2 days, right? Yin Shirshir was about to cry from self-reproach. How could she be so lousy? How could she let her son worry about her all the time? This feeling was terrible. I didn't sleep well. Well, that's why I'm a little sleepy now, Yu said as he rubbed his eyes. He indeed did not sleep well these few nights. Chapter 845. If you're tired, let's sleep for a while more, okay? Yu wants to sleep with mommy. Yin Shirshir immediately carried him to the bed, covered him with the blanket, and hugged him. Yu nestled in her arms. When his little hand touched her skin, it was wet and sticky. He couldn't help but frown in disgust. Mommy, you're sweating so much. It stinks. Yin Shirshir pretended to be wronged and said, Baby, you actually think mommy stinks? Why would you dislike stinky mommy? As he spoke, he yawned. Little Munchkin couldn't take it anymore. He didn't tell Yin Shirshir that he hadn't slept properly for 2 days and 2 nights. Other than worrying about her, he was afraid that she would kick the blanket and catch a cold. Of course, this was only part of the reason. The main reason was that he was thinking about something. As for what it was, he naturally wouldn't mention it to Yin Shirshir. Hence, he didn't sleep well. Hence, when his head hit the pillow, he fell asleep very quickly and let out a sweet snoring sound. In the past, he would always sleep quietly. Even his breathing was so soft that it was almost inaudible. However, at this moment, perhaps he was really tired. Even his breathing was a little heavy when he slept. Yin Shirshir's heart ached as she hugged him tighter. She also fell asleep peacefully with him in her arms. The two of them didn't wake up until nighttime. Hence, when Mu Yaja carried Xiao Chen into the ward, he frowned slightly when he saw Yin Shirshir and Yu sleeping in each other's arms. It was almost nighttime. Why weren't they awake yet? The ward wasn't air-conditioned, and there was no fan. Only a small window was open for ventilation. Although the summer was over, the weather was still hot. There was no air conditioning in the ward, and they were still wrapped in blankets. Hence, when Mu Yaja walked to the bedside, he saw that Yin Shirshir's forehead was covered in sweat. It was obvious that he had perspired a lot. Yu was no exception. He was drenched in sweat, but even though it was so hot, the two of them were still in a deep sleep. Even when Xiao Chen accidentally bumped into the bedpost and made quite a bit of noise, they did not wake up. He hadn't come over for the past few days. Now that the heavy work on his hands had temporarily come to an end, he pushed everything aside. Little Chen was also clamoring for his mommy, so he brought him along. Mu Yaja walked to the bedside and sat down. He reached out his hand and touched her forehead. She had sweated so much, and had been on the drip for the past 2 days. Naturally, her fever had subsided. He was happy to see her recover from her illness. This woman was really troublesome. She had entered the palace twice just to film a movie. There was nothing he could do about her. Yin Shirshir was awakened by his movements. She opened her eyes slightly. When her vision cleared, she saw that it was him. Her eyes widened, and she immediately said in a hoarse voice, "You're here?" The moment she spoke, little Munchkin in her arms woke up as well. He seemed to be still sleepy as he rubbed his eyes in a daze. His sleepy eyes widened slightly. When he saw that it was Mu Yaja, he was stunned for a moment before calling out softly, "Daddy." Mu Yaja pulled him into his arms and gently stroked his messy hair. "You've been accompanying me in the hospital for the past few days. Did you not sleep well?" Yu nodded and yawned loudly. "I'm awake," he said in a childish voice. From afternoon to night, he had slept for a total of 7 hours. It was time to wake up. Chapter 846. He wondered if he would be able to sleep at night if he slept like this. Yu saw the smile on his father's face and seemed to be infected by his smile. He couldn't help but smile as well. For the father and son pair who had always been at each other's throats, this was probably the warmest and most harmonious scene in history. Yu seemed to have accepted him from the bottom of his heart, and no longer resisted his touch. He even called him daddy willingly. In the past, if it weren't for Mu Yaja's threats, he wouldn't have called him daddy. "Yu, can you do your brother a favor?" Xiao Chen suddenly came over shamelessly with a fawning smile on his face. Yu glanced at him and saw the fawning smile on his face. He didn't have to think twice to know that he had a favor to ask of him. His elder brother had a favor to ask of him, But he couldn't possibly agree so quickly, could he? Hence Yu Yu pouted and said, I'm not helping you. Why? Xiao Yichen pouted pitifully and said, Actually, the favor I'm asking of you is really a small matter for you. It's a piece of cake for you. I can't help you for free. Yu Yu suddenly rubbed his flat stomach and rolled his eyes. He smiled mischievously and said, How about this? You treat me to a big meal, and I'll help you. A big meal? Wasn't that a small matter? Xiao Yichen agreed immediately. Okay. It's a deal then. Okay, tell me, what do you need help with? Hee. Xiao Yichen smiled and passed the arithmetic book in his hand to him. There are a few questions that I need your help with. Yin Shirshir was so amused that she laughed out loud. These two little fellows were really too interesting. Mu Yaja's expression froze for a moment. How could he say that he felt embarrassed? As the older brother, he had to ask his younger brother for some simple arithmetic questions. Yu Yu's lips twitched as he took the arithmetic book from his brother's hand. Although it was just a few questions, when he opened the book, he saw that it was full of multiplication and division. In addition to the arithmetic book, there were more than 10 English translation questions. Xiao Yichen went to Allen Bell Bilingual Kindergarten. Although it was a kindergarten, the teaching style was very strict. The school insisted on letting the children win at the starting line. They had already started to learn some questions that were only taught in primary school. Therefore, most kindergartens only to count, addition and subtraction, subtraction and multiplication and division were taught. This was difficult for little Yichen. He rubbed his head for a long time, and only felt a splitting headache. As for addition and subtraction, it was fortunate that he could count them one by one with his fingers. But when it came to multiplication and division, even if you counted your toes, you wouldn't be able to do it. Little Yichen grumbled. I hate math the most. It's not fun at all to do. You're so stupid. These questions are so easy, but you can't even solve them. If Xiao Yichen saw you use usual extracurricular exercises, he would probably collapse at the desk and foam at the mouth. Xiao Yichen seemed to understand the disdain in Yu Yu's eyes. He held his heart in pain and said, Brother, you despise me. That's for sure. Sob. Xiao Yichen cried as he collapsed on the sofa. Yu Yu took the exercise book and scanned through the questions. It was so simple that it made one's hair stand on end. Xiao Yichen eagerly handed over a pen. However, he did not expect Yu Yu to take the pen from him and fill in the answers almost immediately after reading the questions. Chapter 847. Xiao Yichen felt that in the blink of an eye, Yu Yu had already thrown the neatly filled arithmetic book to him. I'm done. You're so fast? He was in disbelief. Yu Yu answered matter-of-factly, Of course. These questions are too easy. Xiao Yichen's eyes went blank for a moment before he hurriedly flipped through the book to see if he had just filled in the answers half-heartedly. However, he casually picked a few answers and checked them with much effort. They were all correct. For a moment, Xiao Yichen could not believe his eyes. He felt that Yin Tianyou's calculation speed was unbelievable. How did he do it? How did he finish it so quickly? Xiao Yichen passed the English book to him. There were only a few translation questions left. Yu Yu gave him a look of disdain before he swept through the questions like a whirlwind. Xiao Yichen's mouth was so wide open that 2 eggs could be stuffed in it. Yu Yu reached out to lift his chin and manually closed his mouth. I'm done. That's amazing. Xiao Yichen exclaimed from the bottom of his heart in disbelief. He was waiting for Yu Yu to be trapped by these annoying questions, so that he could embarrass him. In the end, he finished it so quickly. He did not even know if it took him more than 5 minutes to finish it. Do you think I'm you? Yu Yu looked proud. Despite his disdainful words, Xiao Yichen's praise was very pleasing to his ears. He raised his chin proudly. Yu Yu, you're so good? Yin Shirshir was also stunned by the speed at which he swept through the questions. She did not know that her precious son was so good at studying. Of course. Yu Yu's little tail wagged. I'm much smarter than Xiao Yichen. Yes. Little brother, you're so smart. I spent half a day trying to solve these questions, but you finished them in just a few minutes. You're amazing. Xiao Yichen complimented him again. Yu Yu felt as if she was floating in the air and was about to fly into the sky. Muyaja pulled him down in time. Are you hungry? Yes, yes. You nodded. I'm starving. I haven't even had dinner yet. Muyaja glanced at Yin Shirshir with some resentment. Yin Shirshir immediately raised her hands in surrender. I was wrong. I didn't take good care of you, sob. Mommy, you know it too. As for me, I don't need you to take care of me. You just need to take care of yourself. Yu snorted, but there was a gentle and doting smile on her face. Xiao Yichen hooked his arm around his shoulder and patted his chest. Let's go. Big brother will treat you to a big meal. Thus, the two little guys went out to have fun with their arms around each other's shoulders. Yin Shirshir was so amused that she rolled over on the bed and laughed. How did she give birth to these two clowns? One looked cold and aloof on the surface, but was actually a little joker. The other looked gentle and refined on the surface, but was actually a big tsundere. Muyaja sat on the bed and hugged the lazy and cute little woman in his arms. He saw that her body under the hospital gown was covered in sweat. She must have perspired a lot. This woman probably hadn't showered for 2 days. Yin Shirshir suddenly calmed down when he hugged her like this. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but she could easily feel the deep emotions in his cold and deep eyes. They were surging and intertwining in the dark. No matter how stupid she was, it wasn't difficult for her to see that the man was trying hard to suppress something at this moment. Chapter 848. Muyaja lowered his gaze and looked at the little woman in his arms, who was like a lazy cat. His eyes darkened as he swept his gaze downwards. She was wearing a hospital gown with the collar slightly open. At a glance, one could see the great view hidden under the hospital gown. The man's gaze deepened slightly. He reached out and lifted her collar. Yin Shirshir immediately slapped his hand away and said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, "What are you doing? Don't peek. I haven't seen that part of your body," the man said righteously. Yin Shirshir was annoyed. Muyaja, you. How many days have you not showered? Oh. Yin Shirshir's face turned redder as she said awkwardly, it's been 2 days. Then, Muyaja paused. He suddenly got up and carried her in a princess carry. Lowering his head, he breathed in her fragrance. Let's shower together. She widened her eyes abruptly and wanted to push him away in embarrassment. Her face was burning. No, why not? She shook her head and pursed her lips. Her face was so red that it looked as if blood could drip out. If Yu and Yichen come back and see this, it won't be good. They won't be back for a while. Muyaja said with certainty, an unfathomable smile on his face. Yin Shirshir was stunned. At first, she was still a little confused. However, when she saw the deep smile in his eyes, she suddenly understood. Muyaja must have colluded with Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen must have taken Yu away under Muyaja's instructions to create private space for him. She angrily said, great. You and your father actually colluded in secret. Before she could finish her words, Muyaja lowered his head and kissed her lips, stopping her from speaking. Yin Shirshir was startled by the sudden kiss. The man's kiss was urgent and deep. He hadn't touched her for a few days, and every part of his body was constantly missing her, clamoring for her. He couldn't control himself no matter how hard he tried. After all, he hadn't touched her for a long time, so his kissing skills were a little rough and clumsy. There were a few times when their lips touched, and it hurt her. Yin Shirshir groaned in pain. She clenched her fists and punched his muscular shoulders in protest. However, her insignificant protest was naturally ignored by him. He carried her into the bathroom and put her down. Yin Shirshir wanted to run away as soon as she could. But would he give her this chance? That was obviously impossible. He grabbed her back and pressed her against the wall. His tall body leaned forward and easily trapped her in this weak world. The man leaned his head against her forehead and pressed it against the tip of her nose. His voice was so gentle that it seemed like it could drip water. I miss you. He missed her very much. His clear and mellow breath brushed against her ear, burning her cheeks red. Yin Shirshir shyly turned her face away. His hazy and hoarse mumbling was extremely magnetic, yet it could make one's heart skip a beat without warning. The man grabbed her chin and forced her to meet his gaze. Did you miss me? He questioned her directly, but it made her face even hotter. How could this man be so evil? No, Yin Shirshir said stubbornly, avoiding his gaze. Muyaja was naturally dissatisfied with this answer. His hand gently pinched her waist, which was no match for his. Coincidentally, he grasped her sensitive spot. Yin Shirshir let out a weak moan as she was at a loss of what to do. Chapter 849. Muyaja's tall and slender body pressed against her, not giving her any way out. He asked again, "Did you miss me, HM?" Yes. Yes. Yin Shirshir saw his dark eyes and did not dare to provoke him, so she told him the truth. However, her face was already unbelievably red. Muyaja, however, was very satisfied with her reaction. He could not help but lightly touch her alluring red lips. As if he could not get enough of this delicacy with a single kiss, he pressed his cold, thin lips against hers. The tip of his tongue gently traced the shape of her lips, tasting her sweetness. He repeatedly touched her lips like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, kissing her lips clean. He pressed his lips against hers and asked again, "What did you miss about me?" Yin Shirshir looked up shyly, but her eyes met with his dark eyes. There was no need to hide the depth in his eyes. "Muyaja, stop fooling around. It won't be good if the babies come back and see us." She didn't even dare to think about it. What if Yu and Xiao Yichen suddenly came back and saw this scene that was inappropriate for children? Yin Shirshir only felt ashamed. Her face was so hot that it looked like it was about to bleed. Just thinking about it made her so embarrassed that she wanted to hide in a hole. "You don't have to care about them. Care about me first, HM?" The man naturally wouldn't allow her to evade the topic. Holding her delicate chin, he couldn't help but kiss her delicate jade-like neck. She couldn't help but groan. She completely lost control, and immediately bit her lips hard to control herself from making a sound. Her deliberate suppression made him unhappy. His muscular and tall body, which was unique to men, came close to her. "Not going to say it, HM?" His voice was deep and magnetic. Her heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she even lost control of her breathing and felt suffocated. "Shirshir, tell me, what did you miss about me? I want to hear it." Muyaja kissed her ear and sucked on her round earlobe. Like an electric shock, it spread through her limbs and bones, making her feel numb. How could this man be so vile? Yin Shirshir, on the other hand, was like a rebellious young girl. Whatever he wanted to hear, she would not say. The man finally lost his patience. With one hand on her shoulder, he impatiently tore her hospital gown apart, revealing her snow-white, delicate shoulders and her seductive, jade-like collarbones. At first, Yin Shirshir still struggled. However, the man was really anxious. Not allowing her to resist, he lifted her body up. She was so thin that the man's strong arm could support her steadily. From now on, he was the master of the world. His large palm brushed past. She continued to play with him. Yin Shirshir's delicate brows furrowed slightly. In the blink of an eye, everything was under his control. Muyaja hurriedly penetrated her in this position. In the bathroom, there was a scene that made people blush and their hearts beat faster. After a long time, Yin Shirshir was exhausted. He was so tired that he couldn't even move a finger. She allowed the man to put her into the bathtub. At this point, she couldn't help but sigh at how luxurious this ward was. The bathtub was wide and deep. It was big enough for two people to enter completely. Muyaja squeezed a few drops of essential oil into the bathtub. After a while, the large bathroom was filled with a fragrance. Chapter 850. He turned on the shower and allowed the warm water to splash on their bodies. He hugged her and planted a deep kiss on her forehead. Clearly, he was craving the taste of her kiss. After a round of lovemaking, their bodies were covered in a layer of sweat. Gradually, the rising water in the bathtub covered both of them. Submerging their bodies in the water, they instantly felt very comfortable. Yin Shirshir was like a lazy cat, comfortably nestled in his arms and fiddled with his hands. How beautiful! Every finger was fair and slender with distinct joints. It was so beautiful that it put people to shame. This pair of hands should be the hands of an outstanding pianist. They were like exquisitely carved jade bones. In fact, Muyaja had indeed practiced piano and violin since he was young. Yin Shirshir admired every finger of his, and then reached out her hand to hold his palm tightly. His fingers were much longer than hers. Compared to his, her hands were small and tender. He could wrap both of them with one hand. Her lips curled slightly as she slowly intertwined her hand with his. Then their fingers intertwined and locked together. Wuxia held her hand tightly and wrapped his arms around her shoulders from behind, locking her in his embrace. How he wished that time could stop here. At least, such an embrace could become eternal. He longed for her fragrance and warmth. Hugging her, no matter how chaotic his heart was, it settled down instantly. It was only at this moment that he realized that his love for this woman had reached the point where he could not control himself. He had always been a man with a strong desire to be in control. No matter what, he wanted to be in control of the situation. He did not like the feeling of being controlled. No matter how big or small, he wanted to be the master of everything. However, he seemed to lose his sense of propriety every time he was in front of this woman. It turned out that he had already reached such a stage for her. He still remembered that day when Yin Tianyu asked him righteously, "Do you like my mommy?" He thought that he could give a perfect answer to this question now. Love. It was not liking but love. Liking someone was a joy at first sight, but love was hard to separate. At first he didn't understand. What was love? What did marriage mean? As a result, he felt at a loss. But now he had found the answer from this woman. She had undoubtedly become his weak spot. His reverse scale. One had to know that with his status, he shouldn't be overly concerned about anything or anyone. It was easy to be threatened by the enemy. His current position was high and lonely. If there were any burdens, they would undoubtedly become his burden. However, towards her, he was willing to shoulder it. Love. Yin Shirshir didn't hear him clearly at first. She asked him in surprise, "What did you just say?" "Nothing." Wuxia's thin lips slightly hooked, pinched her chin and kissed her lips. Yin Shirshir raised her head and responded to the kiss. Just as she stuck out her delicate tongue, it was accurately captured by him. He gently bit the tip of her tongue. It was tender, just like a top-notch delicacy. His hands began to wander around her body. It was obvious that he was not satisfied with what he had just done. Chapter 851. Every time he touched her, she would feel a sense of extreme sensitivity. Every time his slender fingers brushed past, clusters of flames would be ignited. She couldn't stop trembling in his arms. The temperature in the bathroom suddenly rose. The water vapor filled the air, so much so that she felt like she was going to suffocate under his lingering kiss. He wanted to go deeper, but she quickly stopped him. The man looked confused and asked, "Why, you don't want to? Why are you so energetic?" Yin Shirshir complained, "Spare me, I can't take it anymore." Wuxia raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled wickedly. He stared at her little face with a mischievous gaze, and let out an ambiguous breath. "You can't take it anymore? It seems like you should train harder." He only wanted her once, and she said she couldn't take it anymore. This woman should strengthen her physical strength. He didn't mind exercising more with her. The ambiguity in the man's words was obvious. She didn't know if it was because of the temperature of the water, or because of his overly mischievous words, but her face became even hotter. "Stop fooling around. Who asked you to be so seductive?" Wuxia pushed the blame to her. Under his big palm's caress, she was like a budding flower, blooming under his body little by little. Wuxia sat her on top of him. Most of the time, he liked to admire the shy and seductive look on this little woman's face when they were in love. It was very seductive. Yin Shirshir was so embarrassed that she wanted to die. She wriggled and struggled several times, but it had the opposite effect and made him even more unable to control himself. He had always liked to take the initiative. Therefore, if he wanted, could she escape? Therefore, in this vast world, he once again possessed her. Charming and gentle. A wave of heat swept through. The rising temperature also made the two people immersed in it climb to the peak of brilliance. When Yin Shirshir was once again pressed under his body, in a position that would cause people to have wild and fanciful thoughts, she could not help thinking angrily, "This is really a very vile man." After she gave in, she was completely powerless to move. She lay limp under his body and let the warm water submerge her. After flirting with her, even when she opened her eyes, she looked extremely lazy. The seductive look on her face was extremely seductive. He was still full of energy and looked like he wouldn't restrain himself even if he fought for a few more rounds. However, she was completely out of strength. She might as well just end it like this. She weakly nestled in his arms, allowing him to clean her body. He took the shampoo and rubbed it on her head, washing it carefully for her. It seemed that this was not the first time he had served someone. However, she was the only one who could make him lower himself to serve her. However, this was his first time washing someone's hair. He had never treated Xiaoyichen so seriously before. Although she had just recovered from her illness, Yin Shishir's head still hurt faintly. Therefore, he deliberately massaged the acupuncture points on her head. The massage was just right, making her so comfortable that she couldn't help but relax her brows. It's so comfortable. Yin Shishir couldn't help but smile. She was obviously enjoying it very much. Muyaja couldn't help but laugh. This little woman knew how to enjoy herself. After that, he helped her clean the bubbles on her body and took a towel to wipe her. Chapter 852. After wiping her clean, he even helped her put on her clothes. Yin Shishir couldn't help but have an illusion. It was as if she was the Honorable Empress Dowager, and the rumored great executive officer Mu, who was swift and decisive with a wave of his hand, had turned into a loyal and devoted servant. Thinking of this, she was amused by her own thoughts and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Muyaja gently scratched her nose. Stupid woman, what are you laughing at? Nothing. Yin Shishir quickly stopped laughing. She couldn't let him know what she was thinking. Otherwise, he would torture her to death. Muyaja glanced at her. From her mischievous gaze, he didn't need to think much to know that she was probably cursing something again. He smiled and couldn't help but peck her cheek. He couldn't help but chide her in his heart. This little woman who made people love and hate her. There was a hairdryer in the bathroom, so he carried her in his arms and dried her hair strand by strand. Yin Shishir was secretly happy. This man usually looked cold, arrogant, and unapproachable, but most of the time in front of her he was very patient. Her heart was filled with emotions. Such special treatment made her feel extremely satisfied. He carried her all the way back to the bed. Yin Shishir quickly asked, "When can I be discharged?" "You want to be discharged?" Muyaja glanced at her. Yin Shishir nodded vigorously. "Yes, of course I want to. After lying in the hospital for 2 days, I'm going to rot. If I continue lying down, I feel that my limbs are going to degenerate. Your fever has just subsided. Stay for another night." "No." Yin Shishir acted coquettishly and hugged his arm. She said softly, "Take me home, okay? I don't want to stay in the hospital anymore." This sentence of "take me home" directly hit the softest part of his heart. Muyaja couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. In an instant he was surrounded by endless warmth. "Go home." His thin lips lifted slightly, and he couldn't help but smile. "Okay. I'll take you home." "Yes." Thus, Muyaja got up and went to handle the discharge procedures for her. Mu Group's private hospital was located in the city center, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Therefore, the surrounding area was surrounded by bustling shopping malls. Xiao Yichen and Yu walked out of the hospital. With him leading the way, the two little lads walked towards the city center. Along the way, Yu walked at the front while Xiao Yichen followed behind him. From time to time, he would sneak a peek at Yu's handsome little face. He seemed to be in a good mood today. At least, it was rare to see his usual cold expression on his face. It was probably because Yin Shishir's fever had subsided that his mood improved. "Yu," Xiao Yichen called out from behind. Yu smiled and turned around. "What's up?" Seeing the smile on his face, Xiao Yichen couldn't help but smile as well. "Why are you walking so fast?" "You're walking too slowly," Yu said as he turned around and walked forward. However, it seemed that his footsteps had slowed down. Xiao Yichen caught up with him and walked side by side with him. Xiao Yichen lowered his head and saw his little hand moving along the hem of his shirt. Suddenly he said, "Yu." What now?" Yu looked a little annoyed. "Can I hold your hand?" Xiao Yichen asked carefully. There was a shy look on his face. Yu was stunned and immediately rejected him. "No." Chapter 853. Why? Can't we hold hands and walk together?" Xiao Yichen shouted indignantly. "It feels weird," Yu said in a muffled voice, but there was a look of disdain on his face. Xiao Yichen was a little confused. What's weird about it? Yu Yu glanced at him but did not say anything. They were both boys. Why should they hold hands? Boys still had to hold hands, which made him feel strange. Hold hands. Hold hands, hold hands. Xiao Yichen saw that he did not say anything and started to act coquettishly. Yu Yu said angrily, Mu Yichen, stop fooling around. Xiao Yichen was unhappy. He held his hurt heart and said softly, I'm not fooling around. I just want to hold your hand. Yu Yu said coldly, Are you a pervert? You're the pervert. Xiao Yichen shouted and moved closer. Hold hands. No. Hold hands. Yu Yu was silent. He could not help but feel a headache coming on. This kid had learned how to act coquettishly. He did not know who he had learned this from. But he did not know who was the first one to act coquettishly. Would he fall for it? It was impossible. Hence Yu Yu ignored him and walked forward. However, he did not know who had taught Xiao Yichen. Yu Yu refused to hold hands. Would it really work? Hence, without further ado, little Yichen caught up with him and held his soft, fleshy paw without a word. Startled, Yu Yu tried to pull his hand out of his father's grasp. Xiao Yichen held on tightly. The more he struggled, the tighter he held on. Yu Yu was impatient and said coldly, Mu Yichen, let go. No. If you don't, I'll bite you. He could be shameless, but he could also be unreasonable. Xiao Yichen wasn't afraid at all. He taunted, I won't let go even if you bite me. Back then, when they were high up in the sky on the Ferris wheel, he had held onto her hand tightly, even when it was on the verge of dislocation. Even at the very last moment, he had refused to let go. Even if he was bitten, he wouldn't let go. She just wanted to hold his hand. Yu Yu saw the determination on his face and gave up struggling. Biting him was just to scare him. But this kid wasn't scared at all. This was inevitable. He had been training in the special forces since he was young and had experienced all kinds of things. Naturally, he was not afraid of anything. Xiao Yichen got what he wanted. He held his hand tightly and walked side by side with him. His hand was a size bigger than Yu Yu's, so naturally, he was able to hold Yu Yu's little paws in his palm. His hand was so soft. Xiao Yichen couldn't help but pinch his palm. He had a ragdoll cat in the Mu residence. When he was bored, he liked to hold the cat in his arms and pinch its paws. However, Yu Yu's little hand felt better than the cat's paws. It was warm, soft, and extremely cute. Yu Yu's palms, on the other hand, were sensitive and ticklish. Seeing him pinch them, they shrank back a little. Thus, she glared at him, hinting at him to stop before he went too far. Letting him hold her little hand was already a big concession from him. Xiao Yichen understood the warning in his eyes and stopped pinching him. Yu Yu, what do you want to eat? I don't know. Let's walk around and see. He didn't know what he wanted to eat. Now that he was starving, he wasn't as hungry as he was in the hospital. Chapter 854. Yu Yu shook his head. I'm sick of it. Do you eat it every day? I can cook it myself. Yu Yu thought to himself. These Western restaurants were so ostentatious, but the Western food they made was not authentic at all. Furthermore, he often cooked Western food at home. The standards of these Western restaurants were not as good as his. Compared to Western food, he was more interested in Chinese food. Xiao Yichen licked his lips and said, I'm a little hungry too. Actually, I quite like pizza. Pizza tastes terrible. Yu Yu said mercilessly. I don't like pizza. Xiao Yichen was silent for a moment, but he let him be. Okay, let's go find something you like to eat. He smiled gently, but he did not hide the affection in his eyes. Yu Yu looked at him and his heart skipped a beat. He thought that this kid would insist on choosing a restaurant that he liked. He did not expect that he would let him choose. It seemed that this older brother was quite tolerant of him. With that thought, he continued to walk forward. Little Yichen held his brother's hand as they browsed the entire way. Although he did not see a restaurant that Yu Yu wanted to eat at, he still enjoyed this aimless stroll. The two little guys suddenly passed by a grilled fish restaurant. Yu Yu walked to the entrance and could not walk any further. He sniffed and smelled the aroma from the restaurant. It was really mouth-watering. Xiao Yichen could not help but be deeply attracted by the aroma. He could not help but lean forward. Yu Yu, shall we eat grilled fish? Oh, okay. Yu Yu licked his lips. He had never eaten grilled fish before, but the aroma was really tempting. It should be delicious, right? With that thought, he let Xiao Yichen lead him into the restaurant. When they stepped into the restaurant, the greeter at the entrance saw the two little guys walk in. The smile on his face froze and his body froze. These two little munchkins are so cute. They were pink and tender, just like two soft and cute glutinous rice balls. The two little munchkins were wearing shirts and suspenders of the same style, looking like elegant little gentlemen. But was it just the two of them? Where are their parents? The usher looked behind them. Yu said, "Hello both of you." Two? The usher was a little surprised. These two little lads looked like they were 6 or 7 years old. They were so young. Did they have the ability to spend money? One had to know that this restaurant was very expensive. Would these two children not have enough money to pay the bill? Thus, she squatted down and asked in a friendly manner, "Children, where are your parents? Just the two of you? Or did he get lost?" "I'm not lost, Auntie. We're here to eat. Please lead us to our seats," Xiao Yichen said politely with a bright smile. As he spoke, he saw that there was still doubt on her face. He said, "I brought money. We won't dine and dash." Even though the usher was puzzled, she could only lead them to their seats and bring them the menu. Yu flipped open the menu and ordered the signature grilled fish and some skewers. Then he waited patiently for the dishes to be served. It was lunchtime, so there were many people in the restaurant. It was a hubbub of voices and the atmosphere was noisy. Yu took out his cell phone. He had been busy taking care of his mother in the hospital and had put aside the company's work. When he opened his inbox, emails popped out one after another. He browsed through them one by one. Halfway through, Xiao Yichen suddenly snatched his cell phone away. Chapter 855. Little Yichen looked at his father's phone and saw that there were more than a dozen unread emails in his inbox on the screen. Yu was shocked and immediately snatched his phone back. "Why did you snatch my phone?" "I was just bored." Xiao Yichen rested his chin on his hand and looked at him pitifully. "You only care about your phone. There's no one to talk to me." Yu's lips twitched. He did not know what to talk to him about. He felt that he had nothing in common with him. However, he didn't say anything and just quietly put his phone away. No matter how important the matter was, it was not urgent to deal with it after dinner. Thus, the two of them just stared at each other like that. Xiao Yichen looked out of the window and saw people walking to and fro on the street. At this time, many people were strolling on the street. Suddenly he saw two children playing, chasing each other, and fooling around not far away. He stared at them for a long time until the children disappeared from his sight. Then he sighed sadly. Suddenly he thought of something. He looked up and asked excitedly, "Where are we going after dinner?" "Back to the hospital." Yu's reply was concise. "Ah." Xiao Yichen dragged out the last syllable in disappointment. He held his head and looked disappointed. Compared to him, Yu was more like a mature and steady veteran. He said concisely, "After dinner, we'll go back to the hospital to accompany Mommy." "But I want to go shopping," he said. "It's rare for me to go out. I don't want to rush back." "Where do you want to go?" "The amusement park," Xiao Yichen said, his eyes clear and bright. He thought about the last time he was in Tunghua Valley. He did not have enough fun and still wanted to go back. He did not have time to go on many rides and felt a little regretful. Yu frowned and reminded him in a low voice, "Mu Yichen, look at the time. The amusement park is closed a long time ago." "Oh." Xiao Yichen sighed dejectedly. Yu held his forehead. This kid was really a child. But when he thought about it, it made sense. After all, Mu Yichen was at the age where he was playful. Presumably, he rarely had the chance to go out. Mu Yaja was busy with work and rarely had free time. Therefore, he was afraid that he had neglected him, so he rarely went out. Therefore, he did not want to rush home. With that thought in mind, Yu said, "If we're done eating, shall we go watch a movie?" "Sure." Xiao Yichen nodded happily. "Are there any good movies recently?" "Yes, there is one." Yu said, "Have you seen Zootopia?" "No. It's an interesting movie. I'll watch it with you," Yu said. Xiao Yichen nodded. "Okay." Yu smiled and picked up her phone to book the tickets online. This movie had been very popular recently, and it was hard to get a single ticket. Therefore at this moment he could only buy a seat at the back. After booking the tickets, the dishes were quickly served. The grilled fish was fragrant. Together with the skewers it looked very tempting. Xiao Yichen was already drooling. He eagerly picked up a grilled chicken wing and took a bite. Yu said, "Don't eat the tip of the wing." "Why?" Xiao Yichen blinked and stared at him with a puzzled expression. "Because the tip of the wing contains toxins. The tip of the wing is equivalent to the lymph nodes of the human body. It's where the toxins are expelled." Xiao Yichen was stunned when he heard that. Chapter 856. I realized that you know quite a lot. Xiao Yichen was a little surprised. You seem to know everything. Every time I cook braised chicken wings, I cut off the tip of the wings, Yu said. When he cooked, he paid more attention to these things. He knew what he could not eat and what was good for his body. Because he had an allergic constitution, he had to pay special attention to these things. His mother also had some things that she could not eat and had to abstain from. Therefore, he paid more attention to these things. Yu had just finished a grilled sausage when he suddenly saw a few waiters staring at them from the corner of his eye. He furrowed his brows and looked a little unhappy. Xiao Yichen followed his gaze and saw a few waiters looking at their table from time to time. He was a little puzzled. These waiters are so pitiful. Why do you say that? Xiao Yichen said sadly. Look, they keep staring at us. They must be hungry. Yu was speechless. Idiot, they're afraid that we won't have the money to pay and run away. That's too petty. Xiao Yichen suddenly opened his school bag and took out a bulging wallet. He placed it on the table. Yu's eyes twitched violently. What are you doing? I'll pay first so that they won't be on guard. As he spoke, he called the waiter over. The waiter immediately rushed over. How can I help you, my friends? I'll pay the bill. Ha! The waiter was stunned. Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows slightly. I'll pay the bill. The waiter immediately brought the bill. The total is 350 yuan. Xiao Yichen nodded and opened his wallet. In an instant, it was as if a golden light was shining. There were rows of cards in his black wallet, and there was a huge stack of cash in between them. At a glance, there were roughly a few thousand yuan. It was shocking. This child. He was a little rich. To think that they were worried that these two children would not have the money to pay the bill. It seemed that they had worried too much. Xiao Yichen took out 400 yuan and asked them to give him the change. When the waiter brought the change over, his expression had already changed. He was already looking at these two little fellows in a new light. Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a slightly dissatisfied tone. So you don't have to be wary of us eating and dashing anymore? The waiter blushed at their words and immediately apologized again. Yu did not want to listen to their explanation and waved his hand. Xiao Yichen put the wallet away. Yu suddenly asked, why do you have so much cash on you? Not much. For the sake of convenience. Xiao Yichen said. He had many credit cards, but they were all supplementary cards. In fact, he was not old enough to use the supplementary card. If he was not in a mall owned by Mu Group, the counters in other malls would refuse to use the card on account of his young age. Therefore, he always kept cash with him in case of emergency. By the time the two little guys finished their meal, there was only half an hour before the movie started. They rushed back and forth to catch up with the movie. It was not Yu's first time watching a movie at the cinema, but it was Xiao Yichen's first time watching a movie. Therefore, it was inevitable that he was unusually excited. One had to know that he usually watched movies at home in his home theater. However, in terms of atmosphere, the movie theater was the best. Therefore, when the movie started, Xiao Yichen could not calm down. Yu could not help but reach out and knock his head. Be quiet and watch the movie. If you continue to be so noisy, you will be chased out. Chapter 857. Zootopia was a Hollywood animated film. It was well made and had a lot of laughs. What was even more impressive was that every character was cute and adorable. Xiao Yichen was fascinated by the film and laughed from time to time. Yu, on the other hand, was bored to death and was even a little sleepy. Compared to Xiao Yichen, he was not interested in animated films. He thought that Xiao Yichen would probably like it, so he accompanied him to watch it. There were a few times when he almost fell asleep. Halfway through the movie, Just as the plot was getting exciting, Yu was startled by an unusual noise. The rustling sounds of the woman's resistance attracted his attention. It seemed to be made by the person sitting in the front row. Puzzled, Yu poked his head over and saw a scene that made his heart skip a beat. Sitting in the front row was a young girl who was about 19 years old. Sitting next to her was a bald man wearing a black singlet and a large gold chain. There was a long and frightening scar on the back of his head. It looked very hideous. The man's face did not look like a decent person. He was extremely vicious and looked a bit like a delinquent youth. Especially his pair of eyes. They were cunning and wretched. One look and one could tell that he was not a good person. Although it was said that one should not judge a book by its cover, looking at the man's behavior, he turned sideways and placed one hand on the woman's fair thigh, rubbing it back and forth. The woman protested softly, "Don't move. Don't make a sound." The light in the huge movie theater was extremely dim. Through the faint light reflected off the screen, he could see that the woman's face was frighteningly pale. "I beg you don't." The woman shook her head and refused while trying to push the man's hand away from her skirt. The man became angry and threatened, "Shut up." As he spoke, he flashed a shiny butterfly knife from his waist. The butterfly knife flashed with a cold light. The woman was so frightened that she did not dare to move anymore. She bit her lips tightly and her eyes were wet. She felt wronged and scared. She tried to stand up and leave several times, but the man held her down by the shoulder. "Play with me for a while." As the man said this, he grabbed her shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. The girl's face was filled with uneasiness and fear. Her wide eyes were filled with helplessness and despair. The cinema was full of people. This round was packed to the brim. However, the people sitting next to the girl were either indifferent or looked straight ahead as if they were watching a movie seriously. They didn't care about it at all. As if they didn't see it at all. There were also some who were frightened by this scene, but did not dare to make a sound. They quietly got up and left. In the blink of an eye, most of the people around the girl had left. Only the girl and the man were left in that row. The girl felt even more isolated and helpless. 2 lines of clear tears rolled down her cheeks as she let out a terrified whimper. She was scared out of her wits, and her entire body trembled violently. "If you dare to make even the slightest sound, I can't guarantee what I will do. Behave yourself." The man threatened as he reached his hand into her chest. From time to time, the girl would let out a flustered groan and close her eyes in shame and helplessness. Is this sexual harassment? A phrase suddenly appeared in Yu's mind. He despised this kind of behavior. Chapter 858. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, the man had a butterfly knife on him and was a dangerous person. Yu was contemplating whether he should call the police or report this to the security guards. Xiao Yichen noticed this as well. He stuck his head out and clasped his hands on the back of the chair in front of him. His face was a little angry. Before Yu could stop him, he suddenly spoke. "Uncle, what are you doing?" The man jumped in shock and turned around. When he saw that it was a young child, he glared at him fiercely. "Get lost. Uncle is busy. Don't disturb me." Xiao Yichen wanted to say something, but Yu immediately grabbed his shoulders. "Are you crazy? What's wrong? He has a knife on him. Don't cause trouble. He's a bad guy. He's bullying that girl. This has nothing to do with you, right?" Yu frowned slightly. Although he couldn't stand it, they were still children. They were defenseless and weak. There should be a limit to their bravery. Xiao Yichen asked. "What if the girl sitting there is mommy?" Yu was stunned by this question. Xiao Yichen said, "Yu, don't worry. I won't do anything dangerous." Yu's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this dangerous? The man had a knife on him. If there was a conflict, the knife would be merciless. Wasn't he afraid? While he was still in a daze, Xiao Yichen stood up and walked to the front row. Just as the man was about to put his hand under the girl's skirt, Xiao Yichen grabbed his wrist forcefully. The man was shocked. He widened his eyes and looked up. When he saw that it was little Munchkin, who he had just scolded, he flew into a rage. "Kid, what are you trying to do?" The girl was also shocked. She looked up hopefully, thinking that someone had come to save her from the abyss of suffering. However, when she looked up, she saw that it was only a 6 or 7-year-old kid. Her hope seemed to have been washed away by a basin of cold water. Her face turned ashen again. Little Ichin glanced at her before shifting his gaze to the man. He sized him up from head to toe until his gaze landed on the man's shameful part, where a small tent stood tall. His heart was filled with disgust. "Uncle, haven't you heard of an old saying?" The man was stunned. He had thought that the child would be scared away by his ferocious face. But he didn't expect this kid to be so daring. "What kind of lady is she? A gentleman has his own way." As soon as he said that, the girl beside him looked like she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was there such a saying? The man was also stunned. Who sent this kid to be a clown? Get lost. The man impatiently tried to shake off the kid's hand. However, he realized that the kid's hand did not budge even though he was using so much force. Instead, he tightened his grip. The man's arm was thick and strong, so his small hand was just enough to hold it. However, he didn't know where the kid's strength came from, but it actually hurt him. If the kid used more force, he was afraid that the kid would break his wrist. "You little brat, how dare you interrupt me? I told you to get lost. Didn't you hear me?" Chapter 859. His hands were twisted together in a strange position, and the pain made him break out in cold sweat. "Ah!" the man screamed. He did not expect a child to be so strong. "Uncle, what do you mean by, I'm disturbing you?" "None of your business. This is my woman, my wife. What I do has nothing to do with you." The man cursed unhappily. "Your wife?" Xiaoyichen blinked his big clear eyes and smiled wittily. Then he turned around and asked the girl, "Are you his girlfriend?" The girl was already dumbfounded. Seeing a child like him being able to hold on to such a strong man, she also felt that it was inconceivable. However, it was as if she was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. When he asked, she immediately explained incoherently, No, I don't know him." "Oh." Xiaoyichen nodded and said to the man, "Look, she doesn't know you. Why, are you trying to use force to force her to submit? You're so dirty." The man's face turned red and he threatened, "You little brat, what does it have to do with you? If you don't want to die, let go of my hand. Otherwise, I'll stab you to death." The girl said with tears in her eyes, "Little brother, I really don't know him. He's a hooligan and he's threatening me. Sob, please save me." She did not know why she had placed all her hopes on a 6 or 7-year-old little boy. However, although this little boy was young, he gave people a great sense of security. The man said angrily, "Shut up." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaoyichen stepped on his toes. The man was wearing flip-flops, so his toes felt like they were going to be crushed under the force of Xiaoyichen's stomp. He immediately howled in pain and broke out in cold sweat. He tried his best to break free, but the child's strength was so great that he could not break free no matter how hard he tried. Xiaoyichen said slowly and elegantly, "Uncle, you have to be more gentlemanly when you treat a lady." The sound of their conflict attracted the attention of other people in the theater. Seeing that the child had made a move, the other men felt ashamed, but at the same time, they seemed to have gained confidence. They walked forward and subdued the man. Yu rushed over with the cinema's security. However, when he arrived, he saw the man being pinned to the ground and little Ichen stepping on his head from above. He, too, was momentarily stunned on the spot. What was going on? Just now, when Xiaoyichen walked over, he was afraid that something would happen, so he hurriedly went to look for the security. However, it was different from what he had imagined. She thought that this man was very powerful, but she didn't expect him to be a weakling. The security guards dragged the man out of the theater and apologized to the audience. The girl was greatly frightened. She could no longer watch the movie. She tidied herself up and planned to leave. Before she left, she bowed deeply to Xiaoyichen and said, "Little brother, thank you. Thank you for being willing to help me. If it wasn't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do. Thank you." "Sister, did you come to watch the movie alone?" I came with my boyfriend." The girl suddenly touched her sore spot. She could no longer hold back her tears, and they flowed down her face. "Where's your boyfriend?" Yu looked confused. Chapter 860. The girl recounted what had just happened. It turned out that the hooligan had been sitting in her boyfriend's seat. She had entered the scene first, and her boyfriend had gone to buy popcorn. Before the movie had even started, the hooligan had sat beside her. She had immediately reminded him that the seat was taken, but he had remained seated. When her boyfriend had arrived, the two of them had gotten into an argument. What she didn't expect was that her beloved boyfriend at first tried to reason with this delinquent youth. However, when this delinquent showed the butterfly knife in his hand, her boyfriend was forced to flee in fear, leaving her alone. Thus, she had been completely disheartened. When the girl had left, the movie was nearing its end. Xiao Yichen had already lost interest in the movie, so the two of them left the theater one after another. Yu Yu had yet to recover from his shock. Muichen, weren't you afraid just now? Yu Yu had to ask the question that had been bothering him. What was there to be afraid of? Xiao Yichen raised his eyebrows in confusion. That man had a knife in his hand. So what? If he had stabbed you with the knife, would you not have been afraid? Yu Yu still had lingering fears and looked uneasy. He had been really afraid just now. If that man had really lost his mind and stabbed him with the knife, he did not dare to think about the consequences. Xiao Yichen thought about it carefully and suddenly smirked. The condition is that he has to stab me. Yu Yu was stunned by his arrogant and disdainful words. Xiao Yichen saw that his eyes were still filled with uneasiness and shock. He could not help but move closer and nudge him with his elbow. Do you think that your brother is very powerful? Yu Yu rolled his eyes. Don't be so full of yourself. Xiao Yichen glanced at him and suddenly thought of something. A gentle smile appeared on his face. Then, were you very worried about me just now? Just now, when Yu Yu had rushed over with the bodyguards, he had clearly seen the worried look on her face. This younger brother of his was a little tsundere. He might not say it on the surface, but he might be worried in his heart. He must be worried about him, afraid that he would get hurt. Yu Yu glanced at him coldly but remained silent. Xiao Yichen immediately shouted in dissatisfaction. What's with that look? Nothing. Let's go. Yu Yu snorted and walked forward. Seeing this, Xiao Yichen hurriedly chased after him and held his hand tightly. Yu Yu was stunned and instinctively wanted to shake off his hand. However, Muichen held on tightly and did not allow him to break free. Yu Yu, don't worry. I will only do things if I am confident. I won't do anything risky. Xiao Yichen explained in a serious tone. Yu Yu grunted gloomily. Next time, don't do this again. It makes me very worried. Xiao Yichen's expression did not change, but he was secretly laughing in his heart. This rascal was still so stubborn. He was clearly very worried about him, wasn't he? Who asked his younger brother to be so tsundere? He was clearly very concerned about him, but he never said anything. Xiao Yichen's mood lightened because of Yu Yu's silent concern. Yu Yu, your brother is very powerful, very strong. So, I will definitely protect you. Your brother is very strong. So, I will definitely protect you. Chapter 861. Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything. He turned his head away awkwardly, but the corners of his mouth curled into a subtle smile. After walking out of the theater, they arrived at a huge shopping mall. There was an ice cream cart at the entrance of the mall. There were many pre-made popsicles on the cart. They were exactly the same as the ones sold by Fox Nick in Zootopia. Xiao Yichen asked, Yu Yu, do you want to eat a popsicle? Yes. Yu Yu licked his pink lips and nodded. Xiao Yichen asked him to wait for him at the same spot, and told him to take care of his wallet. Then he went to buy the popsicles. Yu Yu was waiting at the same spot when he suddenly felt a chill coming from behind him. His intuition was extremely sensitive, so when he glanced back he saw a large male palm reaching towards him, covering his mouth tightly. Yu Yu didn't even have the chance to struggle before he lost all resistance. When Xiao Yichen returned to the same spot after buying the popsicles, he realized that Yu Yu was nowhere to be seen. He frowned and looked around in surprise. However, he couldn't find any trace of Yu Yu. Where did he go? He bit his lip and felt that something was amiss. He didn't know what was going on. Yu Yu was gone. Where did he go? Could it be that he went to visit other stores? That was impossible. Yu Yu wouldn't go anywhere. He must have been waiting for him at the same spot. Where could he have gone? Xiao Yichen was so anxious that a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Yu Yu was carried out of the shopping mall by the man. He walked quickly. He widened his eyes and struggled with all his might. However, the man's strength made it impossible for him to resist. He held him tightly in his arms and his mouth was covered by his large hand. He couldn't make a sound. Was this a kidnapping? Or had he been abducted? He was a little surprised. He had no idea who this man was. The news that he had seen a few days ago suddenly flashed through his mind. It was said that a child was taken away by a human trafficker in a big shopping mall. The child was crying nonstop and attracted a crowd. However, the human trafficker was very clever. In the face of the crowd's doubts, he calmly said that the child was disobedient and needed to be disciplined. He claimed to be the child's father. However, no matter how much the child cried and screamed, "You are not my father! You're not my father!" However, the crowd still did not suspect him. Most of them were just there to join in the fun and watch. In essence, they were indifferent. Thus, the poor child was abducted just like that, and his whereabouts were still unknown. Yu broke out in a cold sweat. Could it be that he had been kidnapped? With such suspicions, he looked around and suddenly caught a glimpse of a large gold chain around the man's neck. An ominous suspicion arose in his heart. Could it be that delinquent youth from the cinema just now? He didn't remember wrongly. Earlier in the cinema, although the lights were dim and he couldn't see the man's face clearly, he remembered one thing clearly. That was that the man was wearing a gold chain around his neck. He looked like a ruffian. Then it must be this man. Could it be that this man was here for revenge? Without waiting for him to think too much, the man carried him to a secluded alley where no one seemed to pass by and threw him on the ground. Chapter 862. His shoulder, in particular, had hit the ground and almost dislocated it. He hugged his shoulder and sat up from the ground. When he looked up, he saw that the man was indeed the delinquent from the movie theater. He held his bald head with his large palm and glared at him with a pair of fierce and gangster-like eyes. He immediately scolded him. "Brat! Damn it! You're really something. You almost made me go to the police station for tea. Damn it! You're so capable at such a young age." Yu bit his lip hard. The man probably thought that he was Xiaoyi Chen. Earlier in the movie theater, the man did not realize that the two little guys were twins. However, he remembered Xiaoyi Chen's appearance very clearly. He thought about how the brat's interruption had ruined his plans and almost made him go to the police station. Just thinking about it made the man furious. He had been running amok on the Black Street for so many years, but he did not expect to almost fall into the hands of a brat who had not even been weaned off milk. Of course, he was furious. After being chased out of the movie theater, he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he waited at the entrance of the movie theater. He wanted to wait for the arrogant brat to leave the movie theater, so that he could beat him up. "Damn it. Brat, where did you get such great skills? How dare you go against me? You're so arrogant at such a young age." The bald man squatted down in front of him and slapped him hard on the cheek. Yu turned his face expressionlessly and glared at him coldly. The bald man was surprised and said, Little brat, have you learned your lesson? What's wrong? You were so arrogant just now. Why are you afraid now? You're not saying anything? Aren't you very capable? Now you don't even dare to say a word." Yu shrunk his shoulders and his eyes were full of disgust. It was as if he was disgusted by the man's touch. He had always been polite and well-behaved. He rarely cursed or even scolded someone. However, when faced with this man, he could not help but want to call him trash. He used his power to bully others. He had nothing but power, so he used it to bully the weak. He was the most shameless. However, he knew that if he cursed out loud, he would definitely anger this man. He wasn't Xiaoyi Chen. He wasn't that capable. Based on what he saw, this man was probably a gangster. He didn't want to provoke a gangster. Therefore, Yu kept her mouth shut and did not dare to say anything. Sometimes, one had to learn how to endure humiliation. If she spoke too fast and angered this man, she would be covered in wounds. Mommy was going to be sad again. He didn't want to upset his mommy. The man saw that he was silent, but he became more and more angry. He scolded and kicked up. "Damn it! Say something. You were so arrogant just now. Why are you acting like a retard now? Do you know how to speak human language?" The strength of this kick was not small. Yu Yu was immediately kicked to the ground. She was in so much pain that she broke out in cold sweat. The man stepped on the back of Yu Yu's hand, and Yu Yu cried out in pain. Haha. Does it hurt? With this hand of yours, weren't you very capable just now? Why can't you use any strength now? The man humiliated him as he twisted his heel and stomped on his hand again and again. Chapter 863. Despite the increasing pain in his hand, Yu Yu still kept his mouth shut and did not utter a sound. Not to mention begging for mercy, he did not even groan in pain. Damn it! You little brat, you sure have a tough mouth. The man slapped her in the face again. Yu Yu's face was turned to the side from the slap. At the same time, the wallet in his arms fell to the ground. Yu Yu was shocked and reached out to pick up the wallet. However, the man was one step ahead of him and snatched the wallet away. The bald man snorted coldly and smiled evilly. He opened the wallet and saw stacks of cash and rows of exquisite credit cards. Oh, are you a rich kid? The man was shocked. Then he smirked evilly. I didn't expect you to be a rich kid. You have so much money on you. You must be extremely wealthy, right? Yu Yu's brows furrowed deeply as he demanded in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Return my wallet to me. Is this your wallet? The man smirked. Did you say this is your wallet? Haha. Now this wallet belongs to me. Yu Yu was furious. This was Xiaoichen's wallet. Now that it was in the man's hands, he felt that this wallet was tainted by his dirty hands. Disgusting. This is my wallet. Please don't touch it. Not even a finger could do it. He found it dirty. You little brat, you don't seem to be sensible at all. You interrupted me just now. Not only did I not teach you a lesson, you even dared to talk back to me. The man was so angry that he slapped Yu Yu's face again. Yu Yu felt 2 slaps on his face. His cheeks were burning and the pain was unbearable. Tears welled up in his eyes as he felt wronged. However, he was so stubborn that he did not want this scum to see him in such a weak state. He forced his tears back and stubbornly raised his head. He glared coldly at the man. His gaze was like a sharp and cold knife. It was as if he wanted to kill him with his gaze. The man snorted in disdain. You brat, you're quite stubborn. Looks like I have to teach you a lesson. With that, the man spat and grabbed Yu Yu's collar. Just as he was about to give him a kick, a childish voice was heard from behind. Get lost. I won't allow you to touch a single strand of my brother's hair. The bald man was stunned. Before he could react to the situation, he felt a fierce murderous aura coming from behind him. He turned his head abruptly and saw a child standing at the entrance of the alley. Under the moonlight, his shadow stretched diagonally across the alley. In the dim light, he could vaguely see that this child with an overbearing aura had the same appearance as the child in his hands. The bald man was stunned. At the same time, he looked back at the child in his hand. For a moment, he felt as if he had seen a ghost. Why did these 2 brats look exactly the same? Who the fuck are you? Xiaoichen followed the location on his watch. When he passed by the alley, he heard the man cursing and immediately rushed over. He happened to see this scene. Seeing that this man dared to be violent towards his little brother, Xiaoichen was furious. He immediately rushed over and kicked the wall. Using the wall as leverage, he sent a flying kick towards the man's face. Chapter 864. The bald man felt as if his entire back had been hit by a powerful force. His internal organs were in turmoil from the shock, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Cough, cough, cough. The man was in so much pain that he frowned. His mouth twitched for a while before he spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with a few broken teeth. He did not know how such a young child could be so skillful. That one roundhouse kick had actually broken 3 or 4 of his teeth. The man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the pool of blood on the ground. He licked his broken teeth with the tip of his tongue and suddenly raised his head, glaring fiercely at the boy. Xiaoichen did not seem to care about him at all. He immediately helped Yu Yu up and carefully checked the wounds on his body. His cheeks were red, and his clothes were stained with dirty footprints. There was no need to think about how ruthless this man had been. Did he hit you? Yu Yu pursed her pink lips and nodded gently. He did. Just as he finished speaking, Xiaoichen's anger surged, and for a moment, his domineering aura spread to every corner of the alley. At this moment, The aura on his body changed drastically. The smile on his face, which was always filled with innocence and cuteness, had completely faded. It was replaced by a layer of chilling coldness that made one's heart palpitate. It was so cold that it was as if a layer of ice had covered it. F***CKU. You hit me so hard. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know your place. F***CK. The man cursed and got up from the ground. Then he took out a sharp butterfly knife from his pocket and swung it a few times in the air. A few cold glints flashed across Xiao Chen's eyes. The man was swinging the butterfly knife while closing in on him. Originally, he thought that when he pulled out his saber, this kid's face would reveal a terrified and shocked expression, and he would be frightened by him. However, little Li Cheng's face was still as cold as ever, as if he was not afraid at all. Only the coldness in his beautiful eyes deepened. Yu suddenly reached out and tugged at the corner of Xiao Chen's shirt. Seeing that the man had pulled out a knife, Yu suddenly lost his confidence. She knew that Xiao Chen was skilled in martial arts, but the man was carrying a knife. What if he was accidentally stabbed? He didn't want his stupid brother to get hurt. Xiao Chen noticed that he was tugging at the corner of his shirt, and turned around to look at him. What happened? He has a knife on him. Yu wanted to say something but hesitated, not knowing what to say. However, the worry in his eyes could not be concealed. Xiao Chen looked into his eyes and saw the deep worry in his eyes. Only then did his icy expression soften a little. He could tell that his younger brother was worried about him. Therefore he comforted her. Don't worry. I'm fine. Go and call the police now. Yu was about to speak when he saw the man rushing toward Xiao Chen with a knife. The knife in his hand was about to stab Xiao Chen in the next second. He was so frightened that he wanted to pull Xiao Chen behind him. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Chen suddenly turned around and grabbed the man's wrist that was holding the knife tightly. Time seemed to stop at this moment. He opened his eyes and held the man's hand tightly. The knife in the man's hand was pointed at his face, and the tip of the knife was only an inch away from his eyes. Chapter 865. If little Li Chen's reaction had been a few seconds later, the knife would have pierced his eyes without a second thought. The consequences would have been unimaginable. There was even a moment when he imagined Xiao Chen being stabbed in the eye. His heartbeat quickened. The man struggled a few times, but Xiao Chen's strength was unbelievably strong. He gripped the man's wrist tightly and did not allow him to resist. The bald man could not believe his eyes. After all, he had been in the Black Street for so many years and had experienced many killings. Every opponent he met was stronger and taller than this child. He was a hooligan and often got into fights. Moreover, it was real fights. Just the scar on the back of his head was left there by someone. It was a bloody mess and the wound was almost a millimeter deep. If it was any deeper, he would have lost his life. It could be said that he had been through life and death for so many years. Naturally, his strength was not to be underestimated. He originally thought that this child would have some skills because he had been trained since he was young. However, he did not expect him to be so strong that he could not move at all with just one hand on his wrist. He did not consider that he was just a gangster, and that his so-called killings were only for small fries. However, he did not consider that Xiao Chen had been arranged by Mu Yaja to train in the special forces since he was young. The soldiers who were trained in the special forces were true war machines. They were all warriors who licked the blood from the muzzle of their guns. Although Xiao Chen was young, he had grown up in the special forces training camp. Strictly speaking, he was still inferior to those special forces soldiers. However, it was still a piece of cake to deal with him. Xiao Chen twisted the man's wrist slightly. A crack was heard, which sounded like a dislocated joint. The man groaned and the butterfly knife in his hand fell to the ground. Xiao Chen kicked the knife away and looked up at the man's face again. The provocation and contempt in his eyes were self-evident. You. The man was so shocked that large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. His entire face changed. Xiao Chen snorted in disdain, but more than that, he was looking down on Xiao Chen. Then he raised his leg and kicked Xiao Chen's crotch. The man was in so much pain that he arched his body. His lower body went limp and he fell to the ground, his legs twitching uncontrollably. Stinking brat. F***CK, you dare to kick me? The man was unwilling and even more unconvinced. Even though he was rolling on the ground while covering his crotch, he still couldn't help but curse a few times. Xiao Yichen walked over. This time he did not show any mercy and kicked him hard in the face. Simple and crude moves, almost without any technique, but every move was aimed at the bridge of his nose. Which dirty hand did you use to touch my brother? Xiao Yichen stepped on his head with one foot. His gaze fell on his flailing arms, and his other foot suddenly stepped on his right hand. This one? He asked casually and raised his eyebrows. His tone was cold and dangerous. Let go. The man cursed. Xiao Yichen increased the strength of his foot, and brazenly stomped on his face. Shut up. Bang. Xiao Yichen kicked the bridge of his nose again. The man groaned, and was in so much pain that tears rolled down his cheeks. Chapter 866. Yu, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. This stupid brother of his, he thought that other than a cute face, there was nothing good about him. He did not expect him to be so powerful. He was much more powerful than he had imagined. He was like a cold warrior. For a moment he seemed to see Mu Yage's arrogant and domineering shadow in him. He was handsome. Even though he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that Xiao Yichen was elegant and handsome. Brother. Xiao Yichen turned around and looked at him. Yu immediately walked over. Brother. Where did this guy touch you just now? He slapped me twice. And? Xiao Yichen asked again. He kicked my shoulder. Come here and return what he gave you just now. Xiao Yichen said. Yu was stunned and shook his head. Why? You don't dare? Xiao Yichen looked confused. The man at his feet did not dare to speak. He was like a dead fish waiting to be slaughtered. He had no other choice but to surrender. Even though he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that this kid was a ruthless character. Don't be afraid. I'm not afraid. Yu looked at the man who was pinned to the ground by Xiao Yichen and said coldly, I just feel disgusted. I don't want to dirty my hands. He had a serious obsession with cleanliness. This man was too disgusting. He did not want to touch him at all. Xiao Yichen snorted and turned around. His gaze fell on the man at his feet. It's disgusting. However, Daddy told me that force is not used to bully the weak. It is used to protect the people you love. Force is used to protect the people you love. It is also used to protect your family. As he thought of this, he stepped on the man's hand and crushed it with his heel. A strange sound was heard and the man's wrist was crushed. The bald man groaned in pain. His eyes were bloodshot as if they had been pierced by needles. Xiao Yichen stepped on his other hand and crushed it hard. With a crack, his other hand was also crippled. Ah! The man couldn't hold it in any longer, and let out a cry of pain like a pig being slaughtered. The veins on his forehead bulged. He couldn't bear the double pain and immediately begged for mercy. Please don't. Xiao Yichen ignored his pleas. He grabbed his shirt and pulled him up from the ground. Then he kicked him like a rubber ball and sent him flying a few meters away. Bang. The man was like a kite with a broken string as he fell into the corner. His head was bleeding profusely. Can't even withstand a single blow. Xiao Yichen harumphed coldly, then turned around with a gentle smile on his face. He gently held Yu's hand and said, Let's go back. Okay. Just as the two little lads were about to leave, the man's cold and vicious curses came from behind them. You two brats, do you know who I am? How dare you touch me? Don't let me see you again. Otherwise I'll kill you. Yu suddenly stopped in his tracks and slowly turned his head around. His voice was cold as he asked, Who do you work for? Why don't you tell me? Chapter 867. Haha, Yu's eyes darkened. Silver Wolf Gang? He paused for a moment before a sly smile appeared on his face. Okay, I'll remember that. With that, his lips curled into a cold smirk as he left with little Yichen. The man stared at the backs of the two children as they left. For some reason, he felt a bone-chilling fear. Before returning to the hospital, Yu specially went to a children's clothing store to change out of his dirty clothes and buy a new set of clothes. He did not want his mother to see the shoe prints on his clothes, and did not want her to worry. He also bought a mask to remove the slap mark on his face. Hence, when the two children returned to the ward, Yin Shirshir was shocked to see Yu wearing a mask. Yu, why are you wearing a mask? Yu's voice was muffled through the mask. There are many viruses in the hospital. My immune system is weak and I'm afraid of being infected. Recently, there were many people who caught colds during the summer. Yin Shirshir understood what was going on. Yu Yu's immune system was especially weak. Since there were many viruses in the hospital, wearing a mask could protect him from being infected. Muyaja had already settled the discharge procedures for her, and the family drove home. As soon as they reached home, Yu Yu entered the study and locked the door. Xiao Yichen walked to the door and knocked. He wanted to follow them in, but Yu Yu's voice was heard. I want to read. Don't disturb me. Read. Xiao Yichen's head swelled when he heard the word read. Yu Yu locked himself in the study and took off the mask on his face. His face was still burning. He touched his face gently. Even though Xiao Yichen had taught that man a lesson, the humiliation in his heart could not be erased. Was this the feeling of being humiliated? Yu Yu pursed his lips as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He sat on the computer chair and leaned back slightly. He took out his phone and dialed Li Hanlin's number. The call went through quickly. President Yun, why are you? Agent Li. Yu Yu was impatient and interrupted his long speech. Li Hanlin immediately said, Go ahead. Silver Wolf Gang? What kind of organization is it? Silver Wolf Gang? Li Hanlin's voice was filled with doubt. I don't know much about it. Check and give me the results as soon as possible. Yu Yu instructed and hung up the phone. Someone gently knocked on the door. The boy looked up. Who is it? It's me. Yu Yu, let me in, Xiao Yichen said weakly. I don't want to be disturbed when I'm reading. Yu Yu caressed his red and swollen face. He did not want anyone to see him in such a sorry state. Let me in, will you? I'm worried about you, Xiao Yichen said carefully. Yu Yu remained silent and turned on his computer. He did not want to talk to him. Little Yichen patiently knocked on the door again and again. When he saw that Yu Yu was still unwilling to open the door, he whispered, If you don't open your mouth, I'll tell Mommy that you... Before he could finish his sentence, Yu Yu immediately stood up and walked to the door. He opened it with a look of displeasure. Xiao Yichen was delighted when he saw that he had finally opened the door. Yu Yu glanced at him coldly. Mu-Yichen, if you dare tell Mommy about what happened today, I'll beat you up. Chapter 868. Xiao Yichen immediately dashed into the study, closed the door, and locked it. His heart ached as he looked at Yichen's swollen face. I saw that your face was swollen, so... He held Yichen's hand and pushed him back into the chair. Then, he carefully wet a towel with cold water and wiped Yichen's face. Xiao Yichen stared at Yichen's face. He was very careful with the strength of his hand, afraid that he would accidentally hurt Yichen. Yu Yu was stunned. He looked at Xiao Yichen's face up close. His expression was cautious and his movements were very gentle. He was afraid that he would accidentally hurt Yichen if he did not control the strength of his hand. Xiao Yichen looked at Yichen's swollen face, pouted and blew on it. Your face is swollen. Does it hurt? He asked softly. It doesn't hurt. Yu Yu pursed his lips stubbornly. Xiao Yichen increased the strength of his hand, causing Yu Yu to gasp in pain. How dare you say it doesn't hurt? Xiao Yichen said helplessly. Your face is so swollen. How can it not hurt? Don't tell Mommy. Yu Yu immediately warned him. Don't let Mommy know about this. Why? Xiao Yichen did not understand. Why don't you let Mommy know that you're injured? She'll be heartbroken. Then she'll cry again. Then, Yichen would have no choice but to try his best to comfort his stupid mommy. Xiao Yichen was stunned. He raised his eyebrows but did not say anything. His gaze fell on Yichen's swollen face as he carefully continued to massage Yichen's face. The cold towel was applied to Yichen's burning face, and the pain dissipated a little. Xiao Yichen gently applied a cold compress on Yichen's face as he said, I often got injured when I was young. Injured? That's because I've been training in the military since I was a child. It's normal for me to get bruises and bruises. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips as he recalled his sad past. You're training in the military? Yu Yu's eyes widened in disbelief. Why? Because Daddy wants to train me. Daddy said that boys should know how to endure hardships from a young age and practice some skills. This way, when they grow up, they will be able to protect their loved ones. As Xiao Yichen spoke, He paused and said with some distress, "In the past I really didn't understand why the other children had such a happy life, but I had no choice but to stay in the military and receive such boring training. Every time I got hurt, no one comforted me or encouraged me. Training in the army is really tough. There was once when I was training in the wild, I was accidentally bitten by a snake and bled a lot." As he spoke, Xiao Chen's hands suddenly stopped moving. "Did you know? It's a very thin and long snake. I don't know if it's poisonous, but it bit my ankle. It was so painful that tears came out of my eyes." As he narrated, the scene vividly appeared in Yu Yu's mind. The thought of the snake wriggling in the grass, especially when it raised its head and flicked its bright red tongue continuously, sent chills down Yi Chen's spine. It must have been very painful. Yu Yu frowned slightly. Just imagining that scene was enough to make one fearful. Of course it was very painful. After I was bitten, I used a knife to pry the snake away. I didn't walk far before I fainted. Xiao Chen pursed his lips. Then when I woke up, I was already in the hospital. I heard from the captain that the snake was poisonous. Fortunately, we found it in time. Otherwise, I would have died. Chapter 869. Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect Xiao Chen to be so powerful. How much had he gone through to become so strong? He had thought that this kid was not human. He was so small, yet he was able to fight against an adult thug. It was truly shocking. It turned out that he had gone through hellish training in the army since he was young. Yu Yu asked again, "What happened after that?" Xiao Chen pursed his lips. "After that, I recuperated for a while and returned to the army for training." Oh. Yu Yu was speechless. Based on Yin Shishir's personality, she would have been heartbroken and would not have let her beloved go through that torture. The training in the army is dry, tedious, and especially cruel. There is no winning or losing. There is only life and death. Xiao Chen spoke calmly. He did not think that it was a mistake for his daddy to arrange for him to enter the army for training. "I didn't understand in the past, but I do now. Daddy said that the weak are prey to the strong in this world. No matter what the rules are, they are decided by the strong. Therefore, I want to be a strong person and protect my beloved family. The weak are prey to the strong. The rules are decided by the strong." In the past, he did not understand and felt that his daddy's decision was too cruel. He had almost lost his life a few times and almost had a brush with death. But now he understood. "That's why sometimes I really envy you." Yu Yu looked up at him in disbelief. This kid said that he envied him? That was because he did not understand how he had lived for the past 7 years. If he did, he would not have said such things. It was getting late. Mu Yaja received a call and rushed back to the office. Yin Shishir carried Xiao Chen to the bathroom for a shower. Yu Yu was in the study reading the emails that he had not read yet. Li Hanlin called to say that he had investigated the matter. The Silver Wolf Gang is a group of thugs from the East Street. The East Street is the territory of the Gu family. East Street, a famous black street in the capital. The Li Dongqiang he knew was a small fry in the East Street. And this East Street was under the jurisdiction of the Gu family. The Gu family can be said to be a powerful family that exists side by side with the Mu family. In the past few years, they have used some means to whitewash many of the black assets under their name and set up a listed company. After all, they are a century-old family and still have many forces entrenched in the capital. East Street was one of the assets under the Gu family's name. In the Gu family, other than the head of the family, Gu Jinglian, the Gu family was divided into 2 branches and 4 halls, all of which were headed by members of the Gu family elder cabinet. This Eastern Street was under the jurisdiction of the Vermilion Bird Hall's hall master, Gu Aoshua. It was said that the Silver Wolf group that Gu Aoshua had set up on East Street was actually a debt collection company. To put it bluntly, it was a debt collection company. Debt collection company? Chapter 870. The Silver Wolf group had a bad reputation. In order to get back their debts, they would resort to any means possible. Apart from that, the Silver Wolf group was also in charge of the biggest underground casino under the Gu family. They were very rampant. Director Yin, why did you ask me to investigate the Silver Wolf group? Agent Li, I understood something yesterday. Yu Yu suddenly said. Li Hanlin was stunned. Yu Yu said calmly. This world is crueler than I thought. It's the law of the jungle. The weak will never be able to set the rules. That's why I want to become stronger. Then what you mean is, the hurricane group wanted me to join them. I'll make my decision as soon as possible. Yu hung up the phone after he finished speaking. He threw his phone on the sofa and walked to the window. He looked out of the window silently, his eyes deep in thought. Early in the morning, Yin Shirshir was planning to go to the supermarket to buy some hygiene products. Before she left, she received a call from Xiao Shui. She had not contacted Xiao Shui for a long time. Ever since she returned to China, she had rarely contacted her. She would occasionally send her messages to ask about her well-being. It was said that after she returned to China, her family arranged for her to work in a foreign company. As a newcomer, she needed time to adapt to the environment. Hence, she disappeared without a trace. After picking up the phone, Xiao Shui wailed, "Shirshir, I'm finally on leave. It's my day off today. Let's go out for coffee. I haven't heard from you for a long time. I thought you disappeared from the face of the earth." Yin Shirshir chuckled. You know, newcomers have to hand over their work when they just joined the company. Sigh, I'm going to be tortured to death. I'm in a terrible fix. If I don't have a day off, I'm afraid I'll be overworked soon. Xiao Shui complained as she cursed her immediate superior. I didn't expect you to be so patient. Yin Shirshir was surprised. If you were in the past, you would have quit long ago. I was immature in the past. Now that I've been an adult for so long, I should have some sense of responsibility, right? Xiao Shui said with a grin. Then she asked her, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Peninsula Cafe. Be there or be square. Just like that, they made a promise to the world. In the afternoon, Yin Shirshir dressed up and went out early. She specially went to the dessert shop to buy Xiao Shui's favorite vanilla pancake and hurried over. When they arrived at the Peninsula Cafe, Yin Shirshir sat at the reserved seat. Because she came early, Xiao Shuiren had not arrived yet. She first ordered a cup of mocha frappuccino, leaned on the sofa comfortably, and looked out of the window at the street scenery outside. In the afternoon, the warm sun shone on her body. She closed her eyes comfortably. The weather tonight wasn't too hot, and the temperature was just right. She even felt a little sleepy, so she simply curled up on the sofa, closed her eyes, and pretended to sleep. When Xiao Shui arrived, she happened to see a portrait of a beauty. Yin Shirshir was nestled in the corner of the sofa. The warm sunlight outside the window shone on her cheeks, making her skin look as white as jade. Drunk on the fragrance of a beauty, for some reason, this word suddenly popped into Xiao Shui's mind. They hadn't met for a long time, and Yin Shirshir suddenly became charming. It was probably because she had been too busy with work in the past and neglected her own appearance.